Brought to you by Nacho's Audiobook. Radiant Blade of the Wilderness. Chapter 21. The Distinguished Guest. Ding Songyan pointed toward the well at the mouth of the lane, both confused and bewildered. Miss Xiaoqing, did you just see mist rising over there, with figures moving through it? Xiaoqing and her maidservant traced the direction of his finger and both shook their heads. No. After a moment's thought, Xiaoqing's eyes brightened with clear curiosity. Tell me what you saw in detail. Ding Songyan described the mist that seemed to dissolve into the darkness, the figures in ragged clothes or armor bearing weapons. At the end he asked, "It wasn't my imagination, was it?" Xiaoqing's smile bloomed, bright and lovely. No. What you saw was a scene from the netherworld. A scene from the netherworld? Ding Songyan jumped with a start. A vision of the underworld. Xiaoqing nodded with an affirmative grunt and began circling Ding Songyan, sizing him up and down as she walked. It should be, though I can't be completely certain yet. One day, when I find a rhinoceros horn with spiritual properties, I'll light it and show you the full netherworld landscape. Then you can tell me whether it matches what you saw tonight. So you have natural yin-yang eyes. Yang eyes by day, yin eyes by night. Similar to Chu Zhongheng, except both yin and yang are concentrated in the same pair of eyes rather than split apart. Ding Songyan glanced around, wondering if there were any wandering ghosts nearby. Actually, that doesn't add up either. Xiaoqing suddenly frowned and stopped walking. Once natural yin-yang eyes can see the netherworld, they should always see it. Unless someone with the right cultivation method has placed a seal, why would it be visible one moment and not the other? I don't know either. Ding Songyan was equally at a loss. He began to suspect this stemmed from his having died and returned to life, carrying characteristics of both the living world and the netherworld, and that this peculiarity would gradually fade as he and this body grew more closely bonded, as he became more fully alive. Xiaoqing murmured to herself, "If you truly have natural yin-yang eyes, then cultivating any art that connects to the netherworld or draws upon its power would yield twice the results with half the effort. But since your situation is unclear, I'll ask on your behalf the next time I encounter someone from a relevant sect." "Thank you, Miss Xiaoqing, but there's no need to go out of your way." Ding Songyan did not actually want Xiaoqing inquiring with sects connected to the netherworld. That risked exposing his greatest secret. Xiaoqing was about to speak when the sound of a night watchman's drum echoed from the distant street. "The midnight hour has come. The weather is dry. Mind your candles and lanterns. It's midnight already?" Xiaoqing jumped in alarm and said hurriedly, "Ding Songyan, just cool off in your courtyard. We have to get back." She muttered, almost inaudibly, "Otherwise we'll be found out." As Xiaoqing reached toward him, Ding Songyan's vision went black then bright, his body swaying slightly. He was back inside the courtyard, looking at the family elm tree and the simple shed where firewood and coal were stacked. The mosquitoes and moths that normally flew about in brazen swarms had all vanished. Only seemingly aqueous moonlight remained, dispelling the heaviness of the summer night. Xiaoqing's doing? Having a snake yao around the house is actually nice. No more worrying about mosquito bites. Do snake yao repel mosquitoes? As Ding Songyan's gaze wandered, it suddenly froze. In his eyes he saw the tightly shut door of the main house and the fully closed wooden windows of the west wing. The corner of his mouth twitched. "Doesn't that mean I still can't get back to my room to sleep? I can't exactly bang on the door and wake up Bull, telling him I somehow ended up in the courtyard, right?" As his thoughts churned, Ding Songyan tried to reassure himself. It had been thousands of years since the severing of heaven and earth. Snake Yao should no longer be able to pass through walls or teleport. Xiaoqing had most likely entered the room through a normal opening. He went to the west wing's wooden window and gave it a nudge. It moved, the latch inside had not been fastened. Phew, he exhaled with relief. The next day, with Su Chang'an occupied handling his master Zhang Rui's estate, Ding Songyan came to Dangkong Temple alone to tell his stories. Compared to previous days, the crowd gathered to hear his legend of the white snake had multiplied several times over. encircling him 3 layers deep. Xiaoqing and her maidservant had brought their light embroidered stools as usual and sat in the very front. The flooding of Jinshan Temple was full of dramatic tension, combining the spectacle of supernatural combat with an eruption of emotions and the struggle of human nature. Many women in the audience gradually grew teary-eyed, and more than a few men dabbed at their eyes from time to time. When the story reached Lady by violating the laws of heaven and being imprisoned forever beneath Leifeng Pagoda, Ding Songyan snapped his fan shut and struck his palm. As the saying goes, waiting for 1,000 years, waiting once more, just for these words, heartbreak holds no regret. As the song sounded, as the words waiting for 1,000 years settled into their minds, one listener after another began to weep openly. Xiaoqing had assumed that she would not lose her composure today, being already aware of the story and having been moved once last night. But when waiting for 1,000 years, which had not been part of last night's telling, was sung aloud, the merger of scene and song cut deep into her heart. She could not hold back herself as her eyes reddened instantly and tears slid down her face before she knew it. Her maidservant had pulled out a handkerchief during an earlier passage and was already sobbing. After a moment, Ding Songyan, who could not remember the rest of the lyrics, stopped there and announced there would be another installation. The audience collectively relaxed, knowing the story would not end with the eternal imprisonment beneath Leifeng Pagoda, and let him go without protest. Nearly got trapped there. Storytelling really does have its dangers. Ding Songyan waved at Xiaoqing, who had once again tipped generously, then turned and headed toward North Water Street. Xiaoqing, having heard his plans for the rest of the story the night before, did not press further. She dabbed at her eyes with a green silk kerchief and began looking for a restaurant. After finishing a pork-filled steamed bun, a vegetable-filled one, and a sweet red bean one, Ding Songyan arrived at the Zhen estate at an unhurried pace. In this world, at least in Dingjiang Prefecture, stuffed and unstuffed buns went by the same name. Both were called steamed buns. Those without filling were plain steamed buns, and those with filling were such and such steamed buns. Ding Songyan's selection was a balanced mix of meat and vegetable, giving him both savory and sweet flavors. Once inside the Zhen estate, he did not visit Qin Wanqing and instead went to the Listening Water Pavilion. There, he met Master Yu, whose ear rims were white and whose arms and legs were disproportionately long. "Have you decided?" Master Yu asked. "Yes, Master Yu. I'd like to tell stories for the distinguished guest." Ding Songyan cupped his hands. Master Yu showed a rare trace of a smile. "Gutsy." He gestured for Ding Songyan to follow. They wound through covered walkways and crossed pavilions in the vast Jin estate, heading deeper inside. Ding Songyan kept silent as he walked, observing the surroundings and noting the color of flowers, the shape of rockeries, the content of couplets, the style of brackets and eaves, and various mica-paned windows that could serve as landmarks. The further they went, the quieter it became. Even servants disappeared entirely. At last, Master Yu stopped before a 2-story wooden building, one half hidden among flowering trees. 2 sword-bearing guards stood at the door, both in dark blue fitted uniforms. They stared straight ahead, making no move to stop Master Yu or Ding Songyan from entering. Master Yu halted in the main hall and produced a thick strip of black cloth. "From here, your eyes must be covered. The distinguished guest doesn't even want their face seen? That's highly suspicious." Ding Songyan asked no questions and allowed Master Yu to wrap the black cloth twice around his face and tie a knot. His vision plunged into darkness. Then he felt one person on each side take hold of his arms and guide him through the building, turning this way and that, sometimes ascending, sometimes descending. Gradually, the air grew cooler. This was a stone staircase leading down. Before long, Ding Songyan heard the sound of a heavy iron door opening. He was led through. This is nothing like where a distinguished guest would stay. If you ask me, this is a secret dungeon. As the thought whirled in Ding Songyan's mind, he was settled into a wooden chair. After the heavy iron door closed, an aged voice reached his ears, sounding as though sand were being scraped across metal. A new one. One of the people who had guided Ding Songyan here spoke in a low voice. "Old sir, this is Ding Songyan." He tells stories outside Dangkong Temple. He recently wrote a tale called The Legend of the White Snake that has been very popular. Our patriarch thought you might not have heard it, so he sent him over specially. That grating, uncomfortable voice spoke again. Ding Songyan, what is your connection to the Zhen family? Old sir, my maternal cousin is a concubine to the second master of the Zhen family. I'm considered half a member of the household. Ding Songyan elevated his position slightly. That explains it. The aged, rasping voice gradually lowered. Go ahead, then. Ding Songyan gathered himself and began from in ancient times, in the southwestern lands, at the foot of Qingqing Mountain. Compared to his first telling outside Dangkong Temple, he added far more detail and the story flowed with better pacing. Though he could not see his listener's expression, the distinguished guest would occasionally remark somewhat interesting or not bad, giving him feedback. He grew more at ease the longer he narrated. As he reached Feiyi's appearance and prepared to bring today's session to a close, a strange sensation came over Ding Songyan. The crown of his head seemed to open, and something cool descended through it, reverberating in an aged, rasping voice. You've recently read the secret classic of mountains and seas? Ding Songyan's gaze froze behind the blindfold. How does he know? I've never told anyone this darn secret. Can he read minds? I wasn't even thinking about the secret classic just now. Do not speak aloud. Jin Qianfan can hear. The voice continued to echo within Ding Songyan's mind. It took on a hint of amusement. In all my life, my greatest skill has been the art of numerology. Naturally, I can peer into your secrets. He doesn't seem like he's going to threaten me or broadcast my secret. Is this a whispered transmission or some other method? And he seems very wary of Patriarch Xin? Ding Songyan steadied himself, reached out blindly, accepted a teacup from beside him, and took a sip. Good. You have a quietude in your chest, young friend. You were quick to recover your composure and conceal the irregularity just now. The aged, rasping voice offered a word of praise. By the time Ding Songyan handed back the teacup, his emotions had largely settled. He proceeded with the day's closing as though nothing had happened. The voice still echoed in his mind. If you doubt that my art of numerology is genuine, go to the Crimson Sleeve Street bathhouse in the North Lane Pleasure Quarter before 5 p.m. today. Wait until 5:30 p.m. A fortuitous opportunity will find you there. So kind as to offer guidance? And what will you want from me afterward? Have pity on me, a man who can't even overpower a goose. Why do I keep stumbling into situations? Beneath the black cloth, Ding Songyan's eyebrow twitched. Chapter 22. A Fortuitous Encounter. Once outside the Zhen estate, Ding Songyan looked up at the still blazing sun. Go or not go? The distinguished guest at the Zhen estate claims to be skilled in the art of numerology. He calculated that if I'm at the Crimson Sleeve Street bathhouse in the North Lane Pleasure Quarter between 5 and 5:30 p.m., a fortuitous opportunity will find me. Whether that's true or not, taking a look won't cost me anything. At worst, I'll be mocked tomorrow for actually believing it. My skin is thick. I don't care. With this mindset, Ding Songyan first went home to inform his sister, lest they come searching for him again. Only then did he head toward the North Lane Pleasure Quarter. He had never been there himself, but had heard it mentioned by many. It was where Dingjiang Prefecture's entertainment halls, song houses, and pleasure houses gathered. Entertainment halls invariably contained theaters, and inside those theaters were a variety of performances. Operas, puppet shows, shadow plays, storytelling, and ballad singing. Crowds came and went daily. Around the theaters sprouted restaurants, food stalls, and gambling houses, with medicine sellers, barbers, and fortune tellers visible at every turn. Based on Ding Songyan's understanding, the entertainment hall was essentially a comprehensive commercial complex centered around theatrical performance. When one grew tired of that, there were song houses, pleasure houses, and bathhouses nearby. A storyteller whose fame barely extended beyond the area around Dangkong Temple was not yet qualified to perform in an entertainment hall. He could only be called a street performer. Asking for directions along the way, he arrived at Crimson Sleeve Street. One casual glance revealed a riot of colors vying for attention everywhere, the very air seeming to carry the scent of rouge and powder. As he strolled leisurely toward the bathhouse at the street's end, he noticed that many of the song houses were enormous and complex in structure, 6 or 7 stories tall. If one climbed to the top floor, one could probably see over the northern wall and out to the river. Behind these song houses and pleasure houses were multiple courtyards, from which drifted the faint sounds of flowing water, wine cups, and stringed instruments. Unfortunately, it was still early. The colorful lanterns had not yet been lit, robbing these establishments of some of their glamour. South Wind House. Those standing at the balcony windows are all men. Some are even wearing red female dresses. Those entering and exiting are women, but there are also men. You people of Great Zhaoshur have quite open-minded customs. Ding Songyan pursed his lips privately and arrived at the street's only bathhouse, Sweet Moon Bathhouse. A public bathhouse was a commercial entity akin to a modern-day spa. It mixed various fragrances and herbs with the bathing water. Ding Songyan stayed in the shadows along the side of the Sweet Moon Bathhouse and waited with nothing to do. It was still well before 5. When he grew tired of standing, he switched to squatting. When he tired of squatting, he paced up and down the street. When pacing grew tedious, he walked over to a boiled water stall at the roadside. Boiled water here referred to plain hot water infused with various herbs, flowers, and spices, a type of folk drink. The stall owner had set up a large pot, which was gurgling away at a rolling boil. Seeing Ding Songyan approach, the owner called out eagerly, "Perilla water, cardamom water, floral water for sale." Ding Songyan pulled over a bench and sat down with a smile. "Why aren't you selling iced drinks in this hot summer? Instead, you are selling these hot infusions?" The song houses, pleasure houses, and bathhouses on Crimson Sleeve Street all have their own iced beverages. How could I compete? Look at this face of mine. Is it pretty? The stall owner pointed at his own pockmarked, wrinkled visage. Not at all. Ding Songyan was quite honest. Exactly. If I had the silver, I'd go to Emerald Willow House myself to look at beauties and have one serve me iced drinks, not stare at this old mug. The stall owner pointed at the Emerald Willow House across from the bathhouse. It was one of Crimson Sleeve Street's grandest song houses. It was built using wood and stone, layer upon layer, perhaps 7 stories tall. "What'll you have, sir?" the stall owner asked with a smile after his self-deprecation. Ding Songyan took out his money pouch. Sorghum stalk water. This was the cheapest variety available. The smile on the stall owner's face gradually faded. He ladled boiling water into a bowl, swished a bundle of sorghum stalk pith back and forth in it 7 or 8 times, and added a pinch of coarse brown sugar. 4 coins, he told Ding Songyan. Ding Songyan said in amusement, "It's only 2 coins a bowl outside Dangkong Temple." "This is Crimson Sleeve Street," the stall owner replied calmly. Ding Songyan, who had earned well lately and spent very little, did not haggle. He paid 4 coins, accepted the bowl of sorghum stalk water, and set it before him to cool. As he waited, he shifted his body slightly to observe the activity in front of the Sweet Moon Bathhouse and the Emerald Willow House. Time passed slowly. Ding Songyan lifted the bowl of sorghum stalk water, blew on it a few times, and took a sip. It carried a faint scent of grain, with sweetness lingering. It quenched his thirst but did nothing for the heat. Halfway through, Ding Songyan noticed a stir at the entrance of Emerald Willow House. In the blink of an eye, a figure was thrown out the door, stumbling and crashing to the ground. My fortuitous opportunity? This isn't going to be some kind of con, is it? Ding Songyan had no desire to meddle, but given what the Zhun Estate's distinguished guest had said, he set down his bowl, walked over quickly, crouched, and tried to help the man up. "Are you all right?" he asked as he helped the person up. The man wore a white scholar's robe, his hair disheveled. He hissed with pain even as he shook his head. It's nothing. He looked up, and Ding Songyan was momentarily stunned. It wasn't because the man was strikingly handsome or imposing, but because he had seen him before, at the Zhun Estate. Back then, the Zhun Estate's main gate had stood fully open, with his cousin-in-law, Zhen Quanwang, personally and deferentially seeing this man off. The man had been dressed in feathered robes and a tall ceremonial cap, with 4 beautiful handmaidens and 4 guards behind him. He himself had physical abnormalities, oversized ears shaped like a canine's. The whole procession had exuded status, leaving Ding Songyan certain he was of extraordinary birth and formidable martial skill. And now, here he was, thrown out of a song house, his face bruised and swollen, blood at the corner of his mouth, looking thoroughly wretched. Once Ding Songyan helped him up, the young man produced a cloth and bound his hair back. The 2 large, tawny canine ears that had been pressed flat against his skull beneath the hair sprang back into position with a bounce. It really is him. Ding Songyan had just been wondering if he'd mistaken the person. Now he was entirely certain. The pale, plump, puffy-eyed young man glanced at Ding Songyan and frowned with suspicion. "You know me?" Something seemed to occur to him, and his expression began souring. Ding Songyan said hastily, "I'd seen you at the Zhen estate. You were of lofty status back then, so you likely didn't see me. I never expected that you'd have such a refined taste for traveling incognito." The young man's expression eased. He wiped the blood from his mouth. "You're with the Zhen household? My maternal cousin is a concubine to the second master of the Zhen family." Ding Songyan noted the shift in the other's expression, established his credentials first, then asked with feigned curiosity, "Were you afraid the people at Emerald Willow House would recognize you? Is that why you dressed this way and came without attendants?" The young man coughed twice. "When people look at me, they see only my status and cultivation level. Today I wanted to set all that aside and see whether, as an ordinary man, I could win courtesan Li's favor through my charm and conversation alone. Who knew these people would be so blind? They wouldn't even give me a chance to meet her. Your appeal is your status and cultivation level. Your charm and conversation are better left unmentioned. Whatever you do, don't strip away your identity and strength to test how much personal charm you have. You'll find there's none." Ding Songyan only dared to criticize inwardly. Outwardly he said, "I can understand the desire to travel incognito, but those blind fools actually resorted to violence. Why did you tolerate it instead of teaching them a small lesson?" The young man was quiet for a moment. "If you commit to traveling incognito, you can't give up halfway. That would be like an actor on stage breaking character." As he spoke, the movement tugged at his facial wound and he instinctively winced. "What dedication!" Ding Songyan's expression stiffened slightly. "Meeting is fate. Let me buy you a drink." The young man flicked his wrist in affected nonchalance and strode out toward the main street. "My fortuitous opportunity is with him?" Ding Songyan could not judge the exact time without a clock, so he followed the evidently young man of exquisite birth out of Crimson Sleeve Street before finding a restaurant nearby. The young man was about to call out to the waiter for their finest wine and dishes when he suddenly remembered his current persona. He shifted to a measured tone. "For dishes to go with drinks. And bring a jar of whatever wine you have. Nothing too expensive." After they took their seats by the window, the young man said quietly to Ding Songyan, "I don't actually know what the common wines here are called. I had to let them decide." "Understood." Ding Songyan was very experienced at this. He flipped over the teacups and poured water for the both of them, asking as he did, "How should I address you?" "Ren Yuyang." After giving his name, the young man straightened his back with the bearing of someone the whole world should recognize. This only accentuated his bruised and swollen face. Seeing no reaction from Ding Songyan, he asked in surprise, "You haven't heard of me?" "I haven't." Ding Songyan shook his head. Ren Yuyang prompted, "You've never looked through the orchid rankings? Not even the orchid fresh list, which only features young powerhouses under 30. All right, you don't need to say more. I know you're on the orchid fresh list and have been ranked in the orchid rankings proper, but with your current appearance, beaten till you look like a pig's head." Ding Songyan did not reply with another "I haven't." Instead, he put on a look of astonishment. "Young Master Ren, you're on the orchid fresh list?" Ren Yuyang smiled. This tugged at the swollen parts of his face, eliciting another low groan as his canine ears twitched erratically. I barely squeezed in. Dead last. He raised his teacup and drank some plain water. Ding Songyan had heard plenty of Jianghu talk recently. Flattery came to him effortlessly. The Orchid Fresh list only has 100 names. For young Master Ren to have made it in at all, you are already a model among the realm's young heroes, one of distinguished rank. To avoid aggravating his facial injuries, Ren Yuyang only smiled faintly. Stop calling me young Master Ren. Just call me Brother Ren or Brother Yuyang. I'm 24. You look younger than me, so I'll call you by name. What's your name? Ding Songyan reported his name with some look of astonishment. We're already on familiar terms this quickly? Sensing his puzzlement, Ren Yuyang pointed at himself and laughed. I've always been this way. If I feel a connection, strangers become old friends in an instant. You happen to be there just now. You helped me up, that's fate. Life is short. You should live with abandon. The Jeune Estate's distinguished guest really did predict correctly. Making the acquaintance of someone like Ren Yuyang is certainly a fortuitous encounter. Ding Songyan smiled. Brother Yuyang, then I won't stand on ceremony. As they chatted over drinks and the dishes arrived one by one, Ding Songyan took the opportunity to ask, Brother Yuyang, are you from a sect? Or a noble clan? Ren Yuyang couldn't help lifting his chin slightly. I'm a true disciple of the True Spirit sect. The True Spirit sect? One of the 6 sects, in Great Zhao's, 6 sects and 4 schools. Ding Songyan's smile grew ever warmer. Chapter 23. A Warning. Before long, all 4 dishes arrived. Salted crispy peanuts, braised pig's head meat, eggs scrambled with scallions, and grilled lamb liver, accompanied by a small jar of fashionable lychee wine and 2 bowls of mixed spice noodles. Ding Songyan clinked wine bowls with Ren Yuyang, took a gulp, then amid the sweet lychee fragrance and spreading aroma of alcohol, picked up a piece of richly braised pig's head meat and chewed it slowly. His current body was no stranger to alcohol. As they chatted, Ding Songyan did not ask about the True Spirit sect, nor did he inquire why Ren Yuyang had come to Dingjiang Prefecture in Ning Province. He simply used the martial world anecdotes and Jianghu tales he had heard as conversation fodder, throwing in the occasional compliment. When acquaintance is shallow, keep talk light. Ren Yuyang drank and ate, his intoxication gradually deepening, and began commenting on the Jianghu's Jade Tree rankings. Those men on the list, not all of them but 7 or 8 out of 10, have cultivation methods that enhance their appearance or have consumed something with that effect. Su Yunzhang of the Celestial Maiden sect, Yu Chongyuan of the Five Saints sect, Gu Yi of the Luanfeng sect, Qi Yangbing of the Celestial Secrets sect, Li Linquan of the Thunder Sound Gate, Chu Hanyuan and Zhao Zichang of the Six Dragon sect, every single one of them. They wouldn't necessarily attract such admiration purely on their natural looks. Ding Songyan nodded deliberately in agreement while rapidly analyzing the useful information embedded in these words. The Five Saints sect carries the Fenghuang Phoenix lineage. All colors under heaven gather unto you. That fits. The Luanfeng sect obviously descends from the Luan bird, which the secret classic similarly describes as gathering colors. The Six Dragons sect derives from Yinglong the responsive dragon, ancestor of dragons and origin of phoenixes. That makes sense too. But the Celestial Secrets sect and the Celestial Maiden sect, which god or beast do they correspond to? The Nine-Tailed Fox has a description of beguiles the world. For any lineage carrying that trait, if the men aren't on the Jade Tree rankings and the women aren't in the Peerless Beauties, that would be impossible. Do the Celestial Secrets sect or the Celestial Maiden sect correspond to the Nine-Tailed Fox lineage? And what about the Thunder Sound Gate one? Although I haven't finished reading the secret classic, and remember even less of it clearly, among the thunder-related entries, none mention enhancing appearance or charm. Which one consumed a divine creature? Ding Songyan asked, already guessing. Ren Yuyang chuckled. Li Linquan of the Thunder Sound Gate. In his youth, through a stroke of fortune, he obtained a Yao grass. Yao grass? Ding Songyan did not bother searching his memory of the secret classic, because he could tell Ren Yuyang would explain on his own. That's right. Ren Yuyang's expression turned wistful, his smile mischievous. Yao grass. what the celestial thearcha's daughter Yao Ji, the goddess of Wushan, transformed into after death. Consuming it makes one pleasing to all. If even I feel something for him, imagine how the heroines and female heretics feel. A fierce and brawny thunder sound gate disciple who consumed a pleasing to all Yao grass. What would that combination look like? Ding Songyan was momentarily curious. The ability to make people adore you and be willing to give you their finest things. How enviable. Ren Yuyang joked. If I'd eaten Yao grass, I wouldn't have been thrown out of Emerald Willow House today. I would have gotten to see courtesan Li. But then you wouldn't have been able to demonstrate your natural charm and wit, brother Yuyang. Compared to the 24-year-old Ren Yuyang, who had only been in the Jianghu for a few years, Ding Songyan's skill in casual conversation was clearly far deeper. He had Ren Yuyang smiling frequently, basking in the warmth. What Ding Songyan was more curious about was something else. Consuming Yao grass doesn't conflict with the cultivation method he was already cultivating? Fruits, trees, herbs, and divine creatures that only have medicinal properties won't affect whichever art you cultivate. Ren Yuyang did not hide this. In the Jianghu, this was common knowledge. He picked up a peanut, crunched it a few times, and cautioned Ding Songyan. What I said today about the jade tree rankings, especially the part about Li Lingquan having consumed Yao grass, don't spread it around. I'm not afraid of them, but we'll inevitably cross paths someday, and it would be awkward. That Li Lingquan is irascible enough to deserve the words thunderbolt and lightning. Yu Chongyuan I am genuinely afraid of. Became a grandmaster at 26, broke through to the Heavenman realm at 33, and he's only 34 now. The spirit platform realm is within his reach. I truly can't beat him. Rest assured, brother Yuyang. I've always kept a tight lip. Ding Songyan raised his wine bowl and clinked it to Ren Yuyang's again. Ren Yuyang was about to say more when someone suddenly approached from beside the lacquered wooden pillar nearby. Ding Songyan stared in surprise. The person seemed to have been standing there the entire time, yet he had never noticed. It was one of the guards he had previously seen with Ren Yuyang at the Zhen estate, the one whose figure was ethereal and ghost-like. The guard had not actually been invisible, nor had he used any trick of the eye, nor hidden himself in a blind spot beyond Ding Songyan's line of sight. Rather, he had simply merged with his surroundings, becoming part of the environment. Standing beside the lacquered pillar, he naturally took on the state of that pillar. The guard leaned close to Ren Yuyang's ear and spoke in near silence. Ren Yuyang listened, his canine ears twitching slightly, then looked at Ding Songyan with a mixture of puzzlement and curiosity. Ding Songyan had no idea what was happening and could only wait patiently. While waiting, Ding Songyan studied the guard carefully and noticed that he too bore physical abnormalities, though they were largely hidden beneath his clothes. Without getting close and looking carefully, they would be hard to spot. Both hands were tucked inside his sleeves, but the faint outline of claws was visible. Clear signs of bestial transformation. After the guard withdrew to his original position, Ren Yuyang smiled faintly. He beckoned to Ding Songyan, gesturing for him to move to the side of the table, closer to him. Ding Songyan shifted over, full of questions. Brother, aren't you a storyteller outside Dangkong Temple? Why are there two separate groups tailing you? Ren Yuyang leaned close to Ding Songyan's ear and whispered. His words hit like a thunderclap, startling Ding Songyan. Someone is tailing me? Two groups? I had no idea. Ding Songyan was both alarmed and bewildered. Ren Yuyang maintained his position and continued in a low voice. One is the Zhen household's retainer, Yu Wanxiong. Yu Wanxiong, master you? That name doesn't match his demeanor at all. Then again, his parents couldn't have predicted his future temperament or the path he would take. Why is Master Yu tailing me? The true provider of the secret classic is already dead. Tracing things further back, there shouldn't be any connection between those involved and the original Ding Songyan. Wait, it's because I just told stories to the distinguished guest this afternoon. Master Yu wants to see whether I've been influenced in secret? He's guarding against that distinguished guest with extreme vigilance? Ding Songyan's brow creased instinctively. If that were truly the case, then my going to the North Lane pleasure quarter to wait around would look quite suspicious to Master Yu. Is the Jin household going to grab me and interrogate me later? Should I just go hide at the county office? The other one is that person. Ren Yuyang pointed discreetly with a finger. Several tables away, by the window, a man was drinking alone. He was ordinary in appearance, wearing a common headscarf, with 2 dishes and a pot of wine before him. Ding Songyan glanced over with the corner of his eye. He did not recognize the man, but had a vague sense of having passed him on the street a few times in recent days. In a sea of people, nobody paid attention to an ordinary stranger encountered in passing. But after Ren Youyang's warning, the more Ding Songyan thought about it, the more suspicious it seemed. Who is this person? Who sent him to follow me? Ren Youyang, visibly eager, whispered once more. Brother, just go home normally. I'll keep an eye on this person from the shadows and try to find out who's behind it. As for the other matter, I don't know why Yu Wanxiong is following you either. Internal disputes within your Jin household aren't my place to interfere, lest it complicate matters down the line. If you're truly worried about it, go to the county office and find the Bright Knight sect, specifically Zhang Zhuxi. She's young and not particularly strong, but her father is an imperial court official and her mother is a Bright Knight sect master, a figure who ranks among the grandmasters. She's also the righteous type, willing to stand up for people like you who have no standing. Ding Songyan nodded slightly in response. The Jin household matter could wait. He needed to deal with the problem in front of him right now. Having eaten and drunk their fill, he waved farewell to Ren Yuyang, left the restaurant, and headed toward Chengyu Lane. The evening breeze, carrying a touch of river coolness, cleared Ding Songyan's head considerably. He calmed down and began thinking over several details he had overlooked. What future business does Ren Yuyang have with the Jin household? Or rather, what is between the True Spirit sect and the Jin household? Why was it Ren Yuyang's guard who detected the tales, not Ren Yuyang himself? He had only learned of it after his guard pointed it out. When traveling incognito, did he truly treat himself as an ordinary man, not even bothering to stay alert? Was he that committed to the role? Or was his guard's cultivation method simply better suited to that kind of work? Ding Songyan walked and stopped, pretending to admire the bustling nightscape of the prefecture city. Lanterns hung high in every color, illuminating what looked like a prosperous and bountiful year in the mortal world. Using the excuse of crouching to examine a painting, Ding Songyan glanced naturally behind him. This was his 5th attempt at counter-surveillance. The previous 4 had yielded nothing. His gaze swept quickly. He spotted the man who had been drinking alone at the restaurant. So it's real. Ding Songyan withdrew his gaze and turned his attention to the paintings and calligraphy on the ground stall. In this manner, he ambled slowly back to Chengyu Lane, giving Ren Yuyang plenty of time to act. He had just reached the well at the lane's entrance when a dark figure suddenly darted out from the side. Ding Songyan nearly jumped out of his skin and almost swung his folding fan at the figure. "Brother Ding!" Su Chang'an's voice rang out. Ding Songyan halted his swing. By the moonlight and starlight, he confirmed it was indeed the shifty-eyed Su Chang'an. "Are you trying to play ghost?" Ding Songyan snapped. Su Chang'an smiled sheepishly. "Why are you back so late today? I've been waiting for you." "Wait, why are you waiting for me?" Ding Songyan glanced down the dimly lit Chengyu Lane, where barely any households bothered to hang lanterns. Su Chang'an produced a silver ingot. "Brother Ding, yesterday's affair was all thanks to you. This morning I went to Master's place early and stole 25 taels of silver before the others arrived. The rest I split evenly with the other disciples. They don't know how much Master actually had stashed away, after all. If these 25 taels are my thanks. Please don't refuse. 5 of those are for Bull. You're actually decent, but why did you have to use the word stole instead of something nicer? First come, first served." Ding Songyan cleared his throat. "Since you put it that way, refusing would make me look ungracious." He sighed and accepted the weighty silver ingot. Su Chang'an's expression relaxed into a genuine smile as he headed home. Ding Songyan took 2 more steps forward and saw Ren Yuyang emerge from the shadows to the side and rear. The true spirit sect disciple shook his head with a grave expression and said in a low voice, "Didn't catch him." Chapter 24. Confirming Authenticity. A true disciple of one of the 6 sects and 4 schools, with multiple guards in tow, and he still couldn't catch an ordinary-looking tail? Ding Songyan had placed tremendous expectations on Ren Yuyang. Hearing this, a wave of frustration and disappointment surged through him. He did not let it show. Instead, he cupped his hands. "Regardless, I owe you my thanks, Brother Yuyang. If not for you, I wouldn't even have known I was being followed." Ren Yuyang said with some embarrassment. "It wasn't one person. It was a group. I overlooked that, and they managed to shake me in the crowds." "A group? Caused by the original Ding Songyan? Or something I've stirred up these past few days?" Ding Songyan was taken aback. "I've spooked them. They shouldn't tail you again for a while." Ren Yuyang glanced at the courtyard wall along the side of Chengyu Lane. "That Yu Wanxiong from the Zhen household has also stayed afar. He probably doesn't want me to know he's there. Seems like they've already swapped in a different retainer. They take you quite seriously." Before Ding Songyan could thank him again, Ren Yuyang said reassuringly, "Get some good rest tonight. I'll look into it again tomorrow." With that, he waved and turned to leave. Ding Songyan could only call out his thanks from a distance. He walked along the dark but far from silent lane, exchanging nods with an elderly neighbor who had his courtyard gate open to catch the breeze. When he reached his own home and pushed open the half-closed gate, he saw Bull, bare-chested and dark-skinned, swinging a crude iron staff in the small open space. No technique to speak of, just sweeps, strikes, flicks, and chops. The sounds from the movements were sharp. Inside the main house, his mother Lu Yuzhao and sister Ding Qingyan sat by the oil lamp stitching shoe soles, exchanging quiet words now and then. His father Ding Shengyi sat on a stool with his eyes half closed, swaying his head as he hummed opera lyrics. The yellowish glow spilled from the room, sometimes still, sometimes wavering, spreading like water and drawing mosquitoes and moths into restless flight. Ding Songyan let out a slow breath and smiled as he greeted his family. Before bed, Ding Songyan opened the wooden chest where he kept his clothes. The 5 taels of silver and 300 copper coins he had earned from storytelling were hidden here. Of that, Shaoqing had contributed 5 taels. At the current exchange rate, each tael was worth 800 coins. It was not that other listeners had given little. Ding Songyan had only been telling stories for 4 days, 1 session per day, and taking in over 300 coins was already among the best at the Dangkong Temple market. It only seemed small because Shaoqing's contributions were so extravagant. "My father earns 2 taels a month as a clerk at the yamen. Well, not counting gray income." Ding Songyan also had 4 qian of silver that his parents had given him tucked in his inner pocket. These past few days, the tips for listening to stories and his midday meals had all come from the 50 coins his sister gave him plus a portion of his storytelling earnings. He placed the heavy 25-tael ingot from Suchongan into the clothing chest, then picked out 4 silver pieces. After a moment's thought, he took the last one as well, making a full 5 taels. Returning to the main house, Bull had just latched the door bar. "Bull, this is from Suchongan. To thank us for our help yesterday." Ding Songyan pressed the 5 silver pieces into his brother's hands. Bull's face lit up with surprise. "Chongan's actually thoughtful. I'll give it to mother. Keep it yourself." Ding Songyan borrowed Ren Yuyang's refrain. "Life is short. Don't mistreat yourself. Use this money to eat and drink well every day at midday." He hoped Bull might come to recognize that life held broader horizons, and that the desire for good food and wine might supplant the craving to kill. Of course, it would be best if those 3 things did not get mixed together. Bull was quiet for a long while. "All right, Songyan, you're smarter than me. I'll listen to you. I'll save it up first." "Save it for what?" Ding Songyan asked casually with a laugh. Bull swallowed audibly. "Save up to visit the North Lane Pleasure Quarter." Ding Songyan's expression nearly froze. Well, Bull. I never would have guessed. So you have that kind of interest too." He waved it off and returned to the west wing, closing the wooden door. He stacked the large chest as usual, spread out paper, inkstone, and ink, and prepared to write Su Shirling's story. The secret classic of mountains and seas had long since been hidden between the bedding and the bed frame. "Second brother, you're burning the midnight oil again?" Xiangliu said from the other side of the screen, half amused, half impressed. "You were never this diligent before." She stopped herself, seeming to realize this might remind her brother of his soul departure sickness. "If someone gave you 1 to 2 taels of silver every day just to hear you tell stories, you'd be this diligent too." Ding Songyan patronized her casually. 1 to 2 taels of silver mattered, but what mattered more was that this person would come knocking for new content, and what mattered most was that he couldn't beat her in a fight. "Who is it?" Xiangliu asked, curious. "A girl visiting from out of town. She tips like money is nothing to her. As long as the storytelling is good, she'll toss silver. She's spent dozens of taels these past few days." Ding Songyan pulled over the small chest to sit on and answered honestly. "How generous." Xiangliu could not help comparing. "Is she pretty?" "Quite pretty." Ding Songyan did not lie. Xiangliu huffed, then asked in a teasing tone, "Have you fallen for her?" "No." Ding Songyan remained candid. In his mind he silently added, "I'm afraid of snakes." And besides, there were old feelings he had not yet let go of. After chatting for a while, once Xiangliu drifted off to sleep, Ding Songyan began weaving his story. This installment covered Su Shirling's childhood. He needed to convey the feeling of neighbors all knowing the boy's birth parents were absent while the boy himself knew nothing. He needed to show how the once-you star was different from ordinary people. Ding Songyan racked his brains before slowly piecing together several episodes. Harry Potter and the like became sources of inspiration, though of course, Su Shirling's aunt and uncle treated him well. He had just finished writing a page and set it aside when a pale, slender, beautiful hand reached over and took it directly. "Miss Xiaoqing, you're here?" Ding Songyan was no longer surprised in the slightest. Keep going." Xiaoqing, dressed today in a green skirt that gave her a fresh look, sat on the edge of the bed and read the outline intently, not wanting to talk. Seeing this, Ding Songyan did not dare interrupt. He focused on his writing. As he wrote, a thought occurred to him. Given Ren Youyang's performance today, was he really a true spirit sect disciple? Could he really be the Ren Youyang listed on the Orchid Fresh list? Ding Songyan had not doubted it before because the man had been treated with great courtesy at the Zhen estate. His identity essentially verified by Patriarch Zhen himself. But recalling the various cons he had witnessed in his previous life, there was no shortage of swindlers who seized opportunities to establish superficial connections with powerful figures, then used that to gain others' trust. Of course, Ren Youyang's conspicuous canine ears also served as circumstantial evidence of his extraordinary origins. But what if he was actually a half-breed between the Chuanrong tribe and humans? According to the storytelling scripts Ding Songyan had been listening to these past few days, the Chuanrong resembled dogs and could produce offspring with humans. "Miss Xiaoqing, have you ever heard of someone called Ren Youyang?" Ding Songyan asked, probing. Xiaoqing, who was reading the latest page, looked up sharply. "Yes. What do you want to know?" Ding Songyan chose his words carefully. "I met someone today who claims to be Ren Youyang, but..." He described Ren Youyang's earlier behavior in full detail, omitting only the sharp commentary on the Jade Tree rankings, since he had promised not to spread that. As for the tales, he mentioned only one for now, the one Ren Youyang had lost. After listening, Xiaoqing could not suppress her smile. "It's the real Ren Youyang, the true spirit sect one. Nobody could imitate his essential quality." "What essential quality?" Ding Songyan asked, puzzled. Xiaoqing giggled. "Ren Youyang's essential quality is that the real one looks even more fake than an imposter would. And him failing to catch that tail and find the person behind it is perfectly normal too. He's dead weight. If he hadn't been there, his guard would have caught them long ago." "What?" Ding Songyan was slightly bewildered. What kind of assessment was that? Xiaoqing let out an His cultivation method isn't really suited to that kind of thing. She didn't elaborate. Ding Songyan noted this thoughtfully. It seemed that among the orthodox sects, the names of each other's fundamental arts were no secret, and mentioning them in passing was harmless. But when it came to the specific characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses of each method, that was discussed only behind closed doors and never shared outside. To do so would create a grave enmity. At this point, Xiaoqing's mood seemed to lift considerably. She said with a light tone, "So it's Ren Yuyang that the true spirit sect sent. Now second uncle can't say that me going out at night is foolishness. I've actually gathered important intelligence. Miss Xiaoqing, your group." Ding Songyan was not sure how to phrase the question. "Our purpose in coming to Dingjiang is similar to the true spirit sects." Xiaoqing offered just one smiling hint and nothing more. "Also related to the Zhen household? Good thing I didn't mention that the Zhen household's people are also tailing me. Who knows whether Xiaoqing would have turned hostile?" Ding Songyan wisely dropped the subject. Only Xiaoqing murmured dreamily to herself, "Tomorrow I'll try to help you catch that tail and find out who's behind it." Much later, Ding Songyan finally wrote to the point where Su Shilin learned who his birth parents were, went to the Taoist temple to find Su Xian, and was turned away at the gate. He set down his brush, rubbing his wrist, and watched Xiaoqing pick up the page to read. He asked, as though in passing, "I heard someone mention the secret classic of mountains and seas the other day. Is it true that only the great sects and the imperial vaults have copies?" Partial copies. Xiaoqing was more interested in Su Shilin's family drama. Which sect has a complete one? Ding Songyan could not ask directly whether the Bright Night sect had a complete copy. That would be too pointed. Xiaoqing, moved by the scene between Su Shilin and Su Xian, sniffled and said, "Nobody has a complete one." Back then, at the imperial palace of Kunlun, the situation was urgent, and the emperor-annotated classic of mountains and seas was inscribed across different jade tablets in different halls. Everyone present could only memorize a portion. Some even memorized wrong. If afterward they could have set aside their prejudices, compared notes, pieced things together and corrected errors, there should have been one complete secret classic of mountains and seas. But there are too few selfless people. What circulates in the Jianghu are fragments leaked after certain sects declined. Even more incomplete. And no sect or school would allow anyone to keep such a thing in private. Ding Songyan listened, momentarily stunned. These past 2 days I've been flipping through ordinary copies of the Classic of Mountains and Seas at the bookshop, comparing them against what's in my copy. Combined with Chun Yuliang's earlier assessment, my secret Classic of Mountains and Seas seems to be possibly, complete. At the very least, close to complete. Chapter 25. Mysteries upon Mysteries. Ding Songyan had picked up the brush again, intending to polish the first part of the story. It hovered frozen above the paper, narrowly dripping a blot of ink. This contrasted with the inexplicable horror in his heart, and his imagination raced. No nation's imperial court and no major sect has a complete secret classic of mountains and seas, yet I seem to have one in my hands? Well, the Zhen household should also have gotten the copy from Chun Yuliang. But what gave Chun Yuliang the ability to judge the secret classic as genuine and complete? If it truly is complete or close to complete, where did this version come from? The mysteries and dangers hidden behind this are likely far greater than I imagined. I had been thinking of trading this relatively complete secret classic for a chance to join the Bright Night sect. Now it seems the Bright Night sect would certainly value the content, but what they'd value far more is who produced this version and where it came from. Ding Songyan composed himself and set brush to paper, recording several lines of good dialogue he had just thought up, not revealing the storm raging inside him to Xiaoqing. Meanwhile, she was rereading the deeply painful reunion scene between Su Xian and Su Shilin and did not look up. Having written those lines, Ding Songyan furrowed his brow slightly. Chun Yuliang's secret classic of mountains and seas should have fallen into the hands of the Zhen household. The follow-up to Su Chang'an's master's death is also under their control. Both matters have sunk like stones into the sea, with no further word. Before, I assumed it was a relatively common version. The Zhen household has a grandmaster, they've seen it all, so no follow-up seemed normal. But now it's clear this version of the secret classic is extraordinarily rare, possibly the only one of its kind. Has the Jin household truly not noticed anything strange? Are they truly not curious about its origins? Are they truly not going to question me and Su Chang'an further? Wait, is Master Yu following me because of this? And it has nothing to do with the distinguished guest? Beyond that, Xiaoqing's group and the true spirit sect that Ren Yuyang represents have both come for the Jin household. The Jin household is also harboring a deeply mysterious and suspicious, distinguished guest. They told me to guard the secret strictly, yet placed no restrictions on me whatsoever. They didn't even make me sign a written pledge. At this thought, Ding Songyan suddenly regretted accepting the assignment to tell stories for the distinguished guest. He felt that storm clouds were gathering over the Jin household. Change was inevitable. Something was going to happen. If this were him fresh out of university, he would have thrown himself in eagerly, certain that his intelligence could navigate any danger and yield rewards. The bigger the waves, the more valuable the fish that would be thrown up. But now, after reality had beaten him down, all he wanted was to stay far away, wait for the situation to fully erupt, for everything to shatter into fragments, and then see if there were any pieces worth picking up, speed things up, finish the storytelling for the distinguished guest as quickly as possible, and get out early? Ding Songyan began to calculate. Xiaoqing set down the paper in her hand and said with an obvious nasal voice, "When Su Shilin was begging desperately at the door and wasn't allowed in, I really wanted to curse Su Xian. But then seeing how much pain Su Xian was in on the other side of that door, I felt, sigh. It reminded me of a lyric you used earlier, unfated ones cannot hold hands even face to face. Add one more line and it would fit this scene perfectly. Unfated ones cannot hold hands even face to face. From this day forth they meet but do not see. You're quite the literary one." Ding Songyan mulled it over. "That line is good. May I add it to the story? Best to give his benefactor more of a sense of participation." "Of course." Xiaoqing, having received validation, shook off some of her gloomy mood. Ding Songyan pretended to chat casually. "When I heard people mention the secret classic of mountains and seas the other day, they said the book was originally everywhere, and was only later destroyed by various imperial courts and sects and noble houses, each keeping their own private copy. I had no idea that it was secretly transmitted from the very beginning, and only later leaked into the Jianghu. Jianghu rumors are like that. Truth and falsehood all mixed together. False more often than true." Xiaoqing was dismissive. "Besides, tall trees catch the wind. People in the Jianghu love to criticize the top factions and blame them for everything. They wouldn't dare say it to their faces, but they have the courage to whisper behind their backs." She stood and waved farewell to Ding Songyan, then vanished from the room like smoke dissolving into the night. Ding Songyan felt as though he had just woken from a dream, or watched a mirage scatter. He tidied the papers, brushes, ink and chests, blew out the oil lamp, and lay on his bed, gazing at the ceiling beams where dim moonlight drifted. He thought carefully. He thought about the past, the present, the many details he had overlooked, and the possible developments in the future. The next day, as they reached Fengshui Bridge, Su Chang'an turned to look at Ding Songyan. "Brother Ding, did you not sleep well last night?" Ding Songyan rubbed his slightly puffy eye bags and smiled wryly. "Perhaps it's because I've been telling the legend of the white snake so often lately. Last night I dreamed a huge white snake was chasing me. Just a case of dreaming at night of things you think about in the day." Su Chang'an offered comfort. Today he wore a light-colored scholar's robe with a square cap and looked considerably less shifty. Ding Songyan stepped onto the stone bridge and changed the subject. "You're not working today? With Master Silver, I could go 2 years without working." Su Chang'an laughed. "Brother Ding, you were right before. How can someone who aspires to be a great thief steal from scribes or old women selling vegetables? When bellies are full, shame follows." Su Chang'an then looked somewhat troubled. "I'm planning to visit various martial halls and see if there's a cultivation method that suits me and my future as a great thief. At least I haven't refined any apertures yet, so I don't need to worry about conflicts. But that means the silver won't last 2 years. Cross that bridge when you come to it. Learn first, worry about money later." Ding Songyan had originally wanted to ask Master Yu today when his own arrangement at a martial hall for body tempering and qi cultivation would be set up, but he was already somewhat afraid of going to the Jin estate. Outwardly calm but inwardly agitated, he looked at Su Chang'an and gave a word of warning in passing. Not working for now is the right call. Your master had a bit of a reputation at the yamen. My father came home yesterday from work and mentioned that Constable Xue has learned that your master offended the Jin household and fled. He's planning to put pressure on you younger disciples to make sure that without your master's oversight, you don't get too reckless. Don't become the chicken that gets slaughtered to warn the monkeys. A few more threats and maybe I can push you onto the permanent path for good. Su Chang'an's face went white instantly. I understand. As a bottom-rung petty thief, the person he feared most was Constable Xue. Wait, are you really that easily frightened? Ding Songyan found Su Chang'an's reaction excessive and asked with some amusement, What year were you born? Don't tell me he just looks old for his age? Early in the 18th year of Xingping. Su Chang'an did not understand why Brother Ding was suddenly asking this. Ding Songyan blinked. And you call me brother? He was over a year older than this body. You're Qingyan's older brother. Su Chang'an wore a look of, what's wrong with that? Besides, these past few days I often feel you really should be the elder. You're calmer than me, smarter than me, have better judgment than me, more knowledgeable than me. Stop. When I was 20, aside from being smart, I had none of those things. Ding Songyan waved with the hand carrying his bamboo basket and parted ways with Su Chang'an on the far side of Fengshui Bridge. One headed to Dangkong Temple, the other to visit martial halls. Xiaoqing and her maidservant had arrived early as usual to wait outside Dangkong Temple. As Ding Songyan followed yesterday's outline to narrate Su Shirlin's childhood and youth, he felt the character was still not fleshed out enough, so he wove in several experiences from his own adolescence, becoming addicted to video games and being yanked back on track by his parents. Rubbernecking at a crime scene and nearly being knocked down by the fleeing criminal lurking nearby, going fishing in the mountains and almost stepping into an area being electrofished. These episodes were adapted to fit the ancient setting and Su Shirlin's character. Relying on his innate strength, he bullied his fellow martial hall peers. After being taught a lesson by his weeping aunt and uncle, he gradually understood right from wrong. When he encountered the yamen attempting to arrest a fugitive, he bravely stepped forward and killed the other party with 3 punches. When he went fishing in the mountains, he encountered a ferocious tiger and jumped onto its back to pummel it senseless. With these details added, when the brave, principled Su Shirlin stood crying and pounding at the temple door, begging to see Su Xian just once, every listener present was wiping their eyes. And when Ding Songyan delivered the closing verse, unfated ones cannot hold hands even face to face. From this day forth they meet but do not see. Some wept aloud. You tell it better than you write it. After the crowd dispersed, Xiaoqing, her eyes still red, praised Ding Songyan. I'm the improvising type. That's exactly how I used to win over investors. Before Ding Songyan could say anything to Xiaoqing, she had already slipped into the crowd with her maidservant, apparently genuinely intending to help him catch whoever was tailing him. He shook his head. He planned to use visiting his father as an excuse to stop by the county office, then decide based on the situation whether to go to the Zhen estate. Ding Songyan was about to take his first step when someone approached. The man wore a cyan jacket and a plain cap, dressed like a commoner. Puffy eyelids, pale and plump. It was unmistakably Ren Yuyang of the True Spirit sect. Brother Yuyang, what's this? Ding Songyan asked in surprise. Don't I look more like an ordinary person now? Ren Yuyang smiled and gestured at himself. Ordinary people aren't this well-fed. Ding Songyan chose his words. Ren Yuyang had an epiphany. No wonder people always see through me when I travel incognito. Brother Yuyang, do you need something from me? Ding Songyan asked. Ren Yuyang's expression turned serious. He cleared his throat. Let me go with you to the Zhen estate. Whatever happens, I can't promise much. But if it's only a matter of keeping you alive, Patriarch Zhen will still give me some face. Ding Songyan was momentarily stunned. He had not expected Ren Yuyang to help him to this extent. Catching a tail and finding the person behind it was fun and interesting. It was natural for Ren Yuyang to want to do that. But the Zhen household was tied to the very reason the True Spirit sect had sent people to Dingjiang Prefecture. And Ren Yuyang was actually prepared to disrupt the Zhen household's plans for someone he had met only once in passing. It might not be a direct conflict, but it would certainly damage goodwill. As these thoughts raced through him, Ding Songyan could not help but say emotively, "Brother Yuyang, you truly have the style of an ancient hero." Ren Yuyang clearly had not expected such praise. He blinked, then laughed heartily. How could our generation fall short of the ancients? Delight spread across his face, his smile radiant. After Ren Yuyang came to the Zhen estate with Ding Songyan, he did not follow him inside. He went directly to pay his respects to Patriarch Xin. Meanwhile, Ding Songyan followed the same routine as yesterday. Under Master Yu's guidance, he came to the flower-shrouded building, was blindfolded, and was led through twisting passages until he arrived at the room with the heavy iron door. Throughout this process, Master Yu made no mention of Ding Songyan's visit to the North Lane Pleasure Quarter or his encounter with Ren Yuyang. He maintained his silence. Seated in the chair, Ding Songyan opened his folding fan and was about to begin. Suddenly, he had the same feeling of the crown of his head opening and a cool energy descending into it. The aged, rasping voice echoed in his mind with a laugh. "Discovered that the Zhen household has been tailing you. Worried they have sinister intentions, are we?" Ding Songyan was startled for a moment, then understanding struck. This distinguished guest hadn't used his numerology yesterday to prove anything. His true purpose was to use the encounter to draw Ding Songyan into the game. Chapter 26. The Sea of Consciousness. Yesterday, Ding Songyan had believed that he had no substantive contact with this distinguished guest. Zhen household members were watching the whole time. Even verbal exchanges were restricted. He shouldn't have been suspected. That was why he had dared go to the North Lane Pleasure Quarter to await the promised opportunity and witness the wonders of numerology. Who knew the Zhen household operated on a policy of better to err on suspicion than let anything slide, deploying retainers to tail him in rotation even under these circumstances. As Ding Songyan saw it, if the Zhen household was truly doing this because of the distinguished guest, rather than tracing the secret classic's origins, then this guest should have foreseen what would follow. Yesterday's numerology and fortuitous encounter were deliberately used as a pretext to lure him to the North Lane Pleasure Quarter. From the Zhen household's perspective, his movements would now look blatantly suspicious and his behavior abnormal. Even if he chose to come clean to the Zhen household afterward, they would suspect it was a ruse within a ruse. Given that his status and position were of no importance to them, the outcome was predictable. He truly could not clear the accusations even if he jumped into the Yellow River. And even if the Zhen household believed him, being entangled in a matter they guarded so closely meant the probability of being silenced might not be 10 out of 10, but it being 9 out of 10 was a certainty. The treachery of human hearts. I never provoked you, never offended you. Yet from the very start you harbored malicious intent to drag me under. Ding Songyan felt a surge of anger. He reached for the teacup beside him, hoping the act of wetting his throat would temper his emotions. Though he had spent years in the cutthroat world of business, he had at least operated in a well-ordered society with reliable law enforcement. He had genuinely never encountered someone who, upon first meeting, schemed to ruin you utterly. Moreover, he did not fully understand the mysterious workings of this world's various arts. He had assumed that without overt communication, he would not be suspected. That assumption had landed him in this impossible position. He took a gulp of tea and fought to suppress his anger and panic. One of the most important lessons from all his years was to never let emotions drive decisions. Never think or decide while anger, panic, or fear ruled the mind. As the violent emotions partially subsided, he caught a familiar scent. The scent of a con. Many scams he had heard of, witnessed, or even experienced shared a common pattern. First frighten, then entice. First, one would use every method to either make the target terrified, panicked, or confused, or genuinely place them in a predicament, then reveal identity or power, and use the resulting momentum to guide the disoriented, rattled victim into doing what served their purposes. Everything you did yesterday and said today was meant to make me afraid, wasn't it? Let's see what you say next and how you entice. By the time Ding Songyan returned his teacup to the Zhen household member beside him, he had largely regained his composure. In his mind, the aged, rasping voice still echoed. Even if I hadn't tricked you into going to the North Lane pleasure quarter, the Zhen household would not have spared you. The moment they sent someone who wasn't a Zhen family member to tell stories, I knew Zhen Qianfan was running out of patience. Think carefully. Did the Zhen family take measures to control your parents and leverage them to keep you silent about the storytelling? Haven't their promises to you gone unfulfilled? Things they won't bring up unless you do? In their eyes, the moment you agreed to tell me stories, you were already a dead man, still in the frightening stage. But the Zhen household's behavior truly has been abnormal. For something that requires blindfolding and winding passages just to reach the room, they believed my verbal promise to keep the secret? Ding Songyan opened his folding fan again and began narrating the wedding scene between Lady Bai and Su Xian without missing a beat. Young friend, you and I are bound together on the same rope. Only by setting aside our differences and working together can we find survival in the midst of death. The aged, rasping voice continued. And now the enticement. Whether the purpose is genuine or false is hard to say. Ding Songyan assessed the other's words coolly, never faltering in his narration. The aged, rasping voice echoed once more. As a show of sincerity, I shall first lend you a thread of qi, allowing you to communicate with me in the sea of consciousness without being heard by Zhen Qianfan or those beside you. This qi, residing within you, has various practical uses. In the eyes, it pierces illusions. In the hands, it can hurt others. In the feet, it aids leaping. In the soul, it protects the body. However, you must remember, outside this dungeon, you can only use it twice. Showing his true colors? Is the real goal to trick me into dropping my mental guard so his qi can enter? Ding Songyan scoffed inwardly and had no intention of agreeing. At that moment, the cool energy descending from the crown of his head grew enormously dense, pouring in like a river of stars, and swiftly coalesced into a faintly glowing, shimmering seed. As the seed turned gently, Ding Songyan's consciousness seemed to split in two. One half continued telling the legend of the white snake fluently, emotions rising and falling with the story. The other half had shrunk to hover above a vast, undulating sea of golden light. The sky above the sea was entirely wrapped in thick mist. Only at the highest point was there a single gap, from which a pale, luminous glow descended. In the light, there was a figure standing with his hands behind his back. He was wearing a Huayang Taoist cap and a Science scholar's robe. His temples were gray, and his face was thin. He had a refined temperament, and his eyes were wholly black, as though concealing deep pools. He forced it in without my consent? Then what was all that talk for? I couldn't have resisted anyway. Is this still part of the enticement? What cultivation method is this to be so wondrous? Ding Songyan was both alarmed and suspicious. And an elder possessing such a wondrous art was still imprisoned in Zhen Qianfan's dungeon, unable to free himself. Senior, what exactly do you want? Ding Songyan took the initiative and cupped his hands. The old man took 2 steps with his hands behind his back and nodded approvingly. Your mind remains unshaken. There is promise in your future. First, I need to have a future. Ding Songyan waited for the other to continue. The old man smiled faintly. You need not panic these next few days. Before you finish telling me the story, and before the Zhen household finds any evidence, they won't do anything to you. As for my purpose, you should have already guessed. Help me escape this prison. Help me recover. And in return, I shall grant you a great chance to change your life. Senior, I'm powerless. I can barely restrain a chicken. What makes you think I can help you escape? Forget Patriarch Zhen. Even these 2 Zhen household members beside me could beat me to death with their fists. Ding Songyan laughed in disbelief. Aren't you overestimating me just a little? The old man's dark eyes fixed on Ding Songyan. He spoke with perfect calm. Great strength is just the icing on the cake. It doesn't matter if you're weak. Once you start to do as I say, you'll find that the accomplished have no lack for help. There will be many people to help you. Then why must it be me? Ding Songyan would not be so easily deceived. The old man nodded slightly. Good. You have the caution I possessed in my youth. To be honest, Jin Qianfan sent you here to tell me stories precisely because he wanted me to make use of you. I am merely turning his scheme against him. Otherwise, why would he insist on choosing someone with barely any connection to the Jin household and no martial ability? The Jin household's own members have been studying storytelling for ages. Could they really not learn the legend of the White Snake? That's a fair point. Master, you clearly followed me to the North Lane Pleasure Quarter yesterday. Yet the Jin household has shown no reaction today. Even accounting for Ren Yuyang, if they chose not to kill me, they should still have done something. The way things stand now, isn't it obvious they're setting a trap? Ding Songyan deliberately showed an expression of agreement. The old man looked up at the mist-shrouded sky and chuckled. Your performance has exceeded my expectations. It gives me hope. Senior, what is actually going on? Ding Songyan played along, trying to extract more information. Of course, he was well aware that whatever the other said would be a mixture of truth and falsehood. He could neither believe all of it nor dismiss all of it. The old man in the Huayang Taoist cap and cyan robe paced toward Ding Songyan and sighed. I was blind to have treated Jin Qianfan as a brother, someone whom I could give my back to. My original name is Yen Chongqing. In my youth, my family had scholarly roots. But one day, an elder in my family provoked a heretical sect, and our entire household was massacred. I alone survived. That night, I had climbed the wall and gone out to hang out with a bunch of riffraff I called friends. I actually escaped because of this. One of those riffraff was Jin Qianfan. Later, I fled far away. Relying on connections my ancestors had cultivated, I joined a sect and cultivated powerful arts. For revenge, I sought opportunities everywhere. Fortune smiled upon me more than once, and for a time I made quite a name for myself. One day I returned to my hometown and found that my childhood friends had scattered to the winds. Only Jin Qianfan could still be found. His family had fallen on hard times. He had joined the Four Waters Brotherhood and was cultivating some wretched water ape art. I was alone in the world. Remembering our bond from youth and everything we had shared, I revealed myself to him. I helped him acquire various resources. I found him the Northern Sea Fishspine scripture, a legacy from an earlier master that could subsume his water ape art, allowing him to overturn the saying that, if you haven't become a grandmaster by 40, you never will. At 42, he stepped into the Dharma realm. Yen Chongqing sank into memory. Ding Songyan listened while analyzing which statements were true, which false, and which could be verified. Yen Chongqing withdrew his gaze from the heights. A faint but unmistakable hatred showed in his expression. I treated him as my own younger brother. He honored me as his elder brother. But when I sustained grievous injuries seizing a divine artifact and fled to Dingjiang Prefecture seeking his protection, he coveted that artifact. He betrayed his word. He repaid kindness with treachery. He struck while I was helpless. Heh! Fortunately, having been near death from my wounds, I had not dared carry the artifact on my person. The moment I seized it, I found a place to hide it. Jin Qianfan searched me and found nothing, which is the only reason he spared my life. He threw me into this dungeon, interrogating me day and night. I no longer know how many years it has been. Deliberately vague about how long he's been imprisoned. Afraid I'll investigate and uncover his real identity? Ding Songyan had his suspicions. Yen Chongqing returned to his composed, unhurried manner. Jin Qianfan has reached 60. He can't wait any longer. All of today's abnormalities stem from this. Why can't he wait? Ding Songyan did not ask what the divine artifact was. The other had not mentioned it just now, and asking would likely yield nothing. Yen Chongqing chuckled and said, his Northern Sea Fishspine scripture is incomplete. After entering the Dharma realm, there is no further progression. Moreover, it carries certain hidden dangers. Once past 60, his body will deteriorate rapidly. Without an elixir of immortality, even life-extending treasures will only buy him a few more decades without restoring his strength. The divine artifact can help him with this. I see. Ding Songyan feigned sudden understanding, then asked casually, Senior, which sect did you come from? Yan Chongqing was silent for a moment. For that artifact I betrayed my sect. I dare not speak its name now. You're afraid I'll inquire through the sect and discover there's no one named Yan Chongqing, aren't you? Ding Songyan scoffed inwardly. Chapter 27. Forgetting. Ding Songyan had just finished sneering inwardly when he suddenly felt a belated fear. He was currently in the sea of consciousness, where thoughts converged. Although it appeared he needed that seed to communicate with Yan Chongqing, and his spoken words and inner thoughts seemed separate, he still lacked understanding of this wondrous art's finer details. What if Yan Chongqing, having given him the qi, could simultaneously monitor his thoughts? Save the dangerous thinking for after I leave the dungeon. The thin-faced Yan Chongqing, hands clasped behind his back, looked at Ding Songyan. His posture was composed and his voice unhurried. If you cannot make up your mind just yet, take another 2 or 3 days to think. But remember, the longer you hesitate, the fewer opportunities you will give us to survive. What I said yesterday was no lie. I am truly skilled in the art of numerology. I could already see that you are surrounded by hidden dangers, and not just from the Jin household. The qi I gave you can pierce illusions. It should help you see your situation clearly and make your decision sooner. The old man suddenly smiled. Are you thinking of finding a chance to go to the county or prefectural office and report this to the E-clan or the Bright Knight sect? You may try. Once you have, you'll understand that the only one who can save you is me, and the only one who can save me is you. I was indeed thinking of reporting this. The Jin household can't possibly have no contingency against me going scorched earth and spilling everything. Can they? How would they prevent it? Follow me and intercept? Or is Yen doing it deliberately using the principle that, in order to take, one must first give? He's suggesting I could report the matter while actually using the suggestion as intimidation? Ding Songyan neither said he would report it nor said he wouldn't. Yan Chongqing changed the subject and asked with a smile, Do you wish to learn martial arts? Yes. Ding Songyan wanted to see how the other planned to entice him. To that end, he deliberately added, The Jun household's promise to me was to find a martial hall and cover all costs. If you lend me your aid, I would take you as my disciple. Even if you're unwilling to formally become my disciple, I will still teach you secret arts. Yan Chongqing's aged, rasping voice spread slowly. You're no longer very young. Disciples of great sects train their bodies from childhood, just keeping it below dangerous limits, and don't formally begin body tempering and qi cultivation until 16 or 17. Within 2 years, they show results. I've calculated that you've just turned 20. Starting body tempering and qi cultivation at this age, even with superior arts, will take 3 to 5 years. Being one step behind leads to being steps behind at every turn. The saying, if you haven't become a grandmaster by 40, you never will, isn't absolute, but it holds true for most martial practitioners. My secret art allows you to complete body tempering in 6 months, and within a year, have qi circulating through your entire body without cease. Now that's an enticement that truly stirs the heart. The only problem is, who knows whether what you're saying is true or false? Whether that secret art is really this powerful. After all, if I agree to help you escape, I'll be lucky to survive 6 days, let alone know the results after 6 months of cultivation. Given your earlier display of treachery, feeding me a fake art isn't out of the question. A dead man can't verify anything. Ding Songyan considered for a moment. I'll think about it for a day. Very well. Yan Chongqing's figure gradually faded, and the pale luminous glow that had fallen into the sea of consciousness dissipated rapidly. This mist-shrouded world returned to silence. The gap above was gone. With the seed present, Ding Songyan could split his attention at will, or merge back into unified awareness with a single thought. Returning to his normal state, He narrated earnestly through Lady by revealing her true form and frightening Su Xian to death, concluding today's storytelling session. Out of the dungeon and back in the small building, the moment Ding Songyan removed the black cloth from his face, he saw Master Yu waiting beside him. His heart clenched, but Master Yu simply gave a slight nod. You may visit various martial halls these next few days and pick one you'd like to attend. Once you've finished telling the legend of the white snake to the distinguished guest, we'll make the arrangements. I was worrying about this very thing last night, and am deeply grateful to receive an answer today. Ding Songyan showed delight on his face and cupped his hands. But what flashed through his mind was a common saying. The money's there to earn, but you won't live to spend it. A promise that will never be honored is worth nothing. Leaving the Zhen estate, Ding Songyan immediately spotted Ren Yuyang in his cyan jacket and plain cap, waiting at the mouth of the lane diagonally across. The bruising on his face had not fully faded, and the scab at the corner of his mouth was conspicuous. Seeing Ding Songyan emerge, he smiled with relief. The sight warmed something in Ding Songyan's chest. He and Ren Yuyang had shared only one meal together. Their relationship was barely stronger than that of strangers. Yet the man had gone this far to help. Truly the spirit of an ancient hero. How did it go? Ren Yuyang asked with a smile as Ding Songyan approached. Ding Songyan deliberated his choice of words. They didn't bring up anything. He was uncertain what the exact relationship between the True Spirit sect and the Zhen household was, or what they were doing in secret. For now, he decided against telling Ren Yuyang about Yan Chongqing, to avoid putting him in a difficult position. Of course, if he truly reached the end of his rope, he would not be so considerate. He would beg even a passing dog for help. If they didn't bring it up, that's good. Ren Yuyang waved his hand. No need to thank me. Go about your business. I'm off to the North Lane Pleasure Quarter to watch some opera. After watching Ren Yuyang leave and exiting North Water Street himself, Ding Songyan finally noticed his stomach rumbling loudly. He was famished. He hadn't eaten lunch. He had gone straight to the Zhen estate with Ren Yuyang, and his nerves had been wound so tight the whole time that he hadn't noticed. Rounding a wooden railing, Ding Songyan found a noodle stall and sat down. One bowl of plain noodles, with a piece of braised pork belly. The braised pork belly was a dish brought south when the dynasty had relocated its capital from the north. Coming right up, the stall owner's reply was full of vigor. Before long, a bowl of noodles and dark broth was set before him, sprinkled generously with green scallion and topped with a glistening piece of braised pork, streaked red and white with alternating layers of fat and lean meat, fresh from the pot. 11 coins, please, the stall owner said with a smile. Ding Songyan took out his money pouch, paid with 1 5-coin piece and 6 singles, then picked up his bamboo chopsticks and lifted the pork that weighed about 100 grams. He took a gentle bite. The sauce was rich in flavor. The fat was not greasy and the lean meat was not dry. Chewing it filled his mouth with fragrance. Savoring the food carefully gradually calmed down Songyan's racing thoughts and taut emotions. He was no longer so nervous. As he drank the last few mouthfuls of broth, he held the bowl and sank into thought. He ran through everything in his mind and sorted through every possibility. His gaze completely unfocused, staring at nothing in particular. A long time passed before he finally wiped his mouth, set down the bowl and chopsticks and stood. He planned on going to the county office after all. How could he know where the problem lay without trying? What if there was no problem? Asking for directions along the way, after a quarter of an hour, Ding Songyan finally saw Linjiang County's county office, also in the northern part of the city. Before the county office's entrance stood a large idolatry wall, carved with the image of a deity with a beast's body and a human face, riding 2 dragons. Zhulong, the fire god. Right, the Hong imperial family has always claimed descent from Zhulong. The corresponding entry from the secret classic naturally flashed through Ding Songyan's mind. Zhulong, god of fire, essence of summer, lord of the hearth, minister to the Red Emperor, manifestation of Mars. Gathering his thoughts, Ding Songyan cautiously surveyed his surroundings, searching for possible tales or anyone who might stop him. But the people coming and going were mostly constables in black-patterned red uniforms and Bright Knight sect disciples in black-fitted garb. Nothing out of the ordinary. Ding Songyan withdrew his gaze, carefully rounded the spirit wall, and headed toward the county office's main entrance gate. Along the way, people greeted him from time to time, calling him Songyan or Ding Songyan. Clearly, the original had visited the county office to see his father Ding Xingyi quite often. Songyan, what brings you here? Ding Xingyi, wearing a square cap, was chatting with someone in the side corridor. I happened to be passing by and came to check on you, father. Ding Songyan smiled. The clerk facing Ding Xingyi laughed. Songyan is still so filial. You're a lucky man, brother Xingyi. Ding Xingyi waved his hand with a tinge of self-satisfaction. He still needs discipline, still needs discipline. Ding Songyan chatted with them briefly, said his goodbyes, and walked out through the Yaman's main gate. The scriptures inscribed on the back of the spirit wall outside fell into his vision, and he suddenly froze. Wait, what did I come to the county office for? Ding Songyan's brow creased. He strained with everything he had to remember, thinking until sweat beaded on his forehead. Finally, it came back to him. He had come to the county office to try reporting this to the authorities, to reveal that the Zhun household was keeping a suspicious, mysterious figure locked in their dungeon. Man, Ding Songyan broke into a cold sweat, terror flooding through him. Someone quietly stripped that thought from me after I stepped inside the Yaman? This world has martial arts that can do that? It's similar to how Yen Chongqing affected my sea of consciousness and spoke directly into my mind. So is it that the county office has a Zhun household plant, and whenever I come here they influence my thoughts? Or is Yen Chongqing orchestrating this himself? He's the one who said the county office would be useless. Could he be controlling my thoughts through that seed, preventing me from reporting? I can verify this later. The Bright Knight sect and the E-clan aren't only at the county office. If it really is Yen Chongqing's doing, then the fact that the Zhun household didn't stop me from coming here suggests they roughly know what their distinguished guest is capable of. Ding Songyan found an excuse and turned back to the county office to look for Ding Xingyi. This time, once again, he simply chatted with his father and left the county office without incident. Something is definitely wrong. Ding Songyan stood beside the spirit wall, murmuring soundlessly. His clothes were soaked through at the back. Just then, a donkey cart approached carrying a corpse, with 2 constables seated on it. Something happened? A passing Bright Knight sect disciple asked. Both constables leaped down from the cart simultaneously. One spoke in a low voice. Looks like a natural death, but the body's organs have decayed as if he's been dead 2 or 3 days, while the face shows no more than 4 hours. Very strange. This is very similar to what happened to the small boat gang's Chun Yuliang after he died. Junior sister Zhang has already reported it to the sect, to the provincial capital, and to the flame capital. No reply yet. The Bright Knight sect disciple suppressed his nausea as he examined the corpse. Nearby, Ding Songyan heard Chun Yuliang's name and instinctively looked toward the donkey cart, right at the body. An instant later, he saw a familiar yet pale face. It was ordinary and unremarkable. It was the man who had been following him yesterday. Ding Songyan was struck with shock. The body's organs appeared to have been dead for 2 or 3 days. Chapter 28. A transaction full of problems. If the man really has been dead for 2 or 3 days, then who was tailing me? Or perhaps the face represents the true time of death, and the question is why were the organs decaying so rapidly? Chen Yuliang's body showed similar abnormalities? Ding Songyan felt as though lightning had struck him. Thought after thought flashed through his mind, but his body stood rooted to the spot. Isn't that Ding Songyan? Here to see Clerk Ding. One of the constables by the donkey cart noticed him standing nearby. The man was just under 8 feet tall, with thick brows, large eyes, and a short beard at his chin. He looked to be past 30. Ding Songyan took the opportunity to approach. Sir, I just heard you saying that the small boat gang's Chun Yuliang was the same as this man? Sir. The constable blinked in surprise, then laughed. It really is like Clerk Ding said. You took a fright and got soul departure sickness. You used to call me Brother Li. What's with the formalities? So the original Ding Songyan had some familiarity with the constables. Su Chang'an always calls me Brother Ding. Beyond wanting to get close to Qing Yan, he probably also valued this connection. TSK, that rascal. You really can't judge by appearances. He's not deeply scheming, but he's still got some schemes. Ding Songyan let out an awkward ah. Brother Li, my apologies. Only then did Constable Li answer Ding Songyan's question. Chun Yuliang was the same. Was the other small boat gang member who died that day also like this? Ding Songyan recalled the blotchy-nosed man his brother had killed with a single punch. Why are you asking about all this? The Bright Knight sect disciple present looked at Ding Songyan with suspicion. He was in his 20s, square-jawed, with a stern bearing. Seeing that Constable Li and the other constable who had circled to the front of the cart were studying him the same way, Ding Songyan paused briefly. I was involved in the Chun Yuliang incident. He intended to give a brief account of that day's events, and at the end, try mentioning Yan Chongqing in the Jin household's secret dungeon, to see if he could get the words out. The expressions of Constable Li and the others turned serious. My soul departure sickness was caused by severe fright, and that severe fright was caused by an attempted murder. Using this as his opening, Ding Songyan told the story from surviving the assassination attempt and seeking the Jin household's help, through bluffing the blotchy-nosed man and forcing the secretly observing Chun Yuliang to flee in panic, where Master Yu gave chase. Ding Songyan omitted anything related to the secret classic of mountains and seas. He only said that the blotchy-nosed man had immediately demanded to know why he had returned to Dingjiang Prefecture instead of fleeing, and had subsequently let slip that Chun Yuliang was involved in something suspicious. Before the man could explain what had actually happened, everything was over. In his account, Ding Songyan did not hide the fact that he himself might be implicated in something. This was deliberate. He hoped the Bright Knight sect and the E-clan would periodically question him and investigate him in the coming days. If necessary, being detained wasn't out of the question either. Hearing that the blotchy-nosed man had been killed by a Zhen household member hiding behind a tree, the Bright Knight sect disciple gave an almost imperceptible nod. His name was Wang Yishu. When we received his body, his torso and organs had also decayed as if dead for 2 or 3 days. His face couldn't be assessed. Recalling the manner of Wang Yishu's death, Ding Songyan felt that couldn't be assessed was an entirely reasonable statement. Whether what remained could even be called a face was debatable. Having confirmed that the blotchy-nosed Wang Yishu also showed the same abnormal rapid decay, a deep chill rose in Ding Songyan's chest. Despite standing in the height of summer, he felt as though he had plunged into the depths of winter. He had previously believed that the secret classic's main issue was its suspicious origins, which had likely led to the deaths of both himself and Su Chang'an's master, Zhang Rui. But now it was clear that the buyer was equally abnormal. The seller had problems. The buyer had problems. Every aspect of this transaction had problems. As the middleman, I don't have problems too, do I? Ding Songyan smiled bitterly and said to Constable Li and the others, It's a pity I have soul departure sickness. Otherwise, I would surely remember the crucial details. The subtext of this remark was, Please keep an eye on me, officials. The Four Waters Brotherhood registered their conflict with the small boat gang last month. Wang Yishu's death follows Jianghu rules, so it won't involve you. Once we get a reply from above about the abnormal manner of death, we'll come talk to you. Constable Li patted Ding Songyan's shoulder. Relax. Nothing major will come of it. Nothing major might indeed not come of it. My own life, though, is another question. Ding Songyan wore an expression of worry, then repeated something sharply. The Four Waters Brotherhood registered the conflict with the small boat gang last month? Yes, they've been clashing a lot these past 2 or 3 months. Successful registration means blood is expected. Constable Li explained offhandedly, then added, My name is Li Wu. Don't forget again, Ding Songyan. Ding Songyan pondered briefly. Does the small boat gang have a grandmaster? Yes. In the provincial capital. Li Wu frowned slightly, feeling Ding Songyan was asking too many questions. Then why would the small boat gang pick a fight with the Four Waters Brotherhood here in Dingjiang Prefecture? Patriarch Zhen could crush them with one hand. Ding Songyan voiced his doubt. The Bright Knight sect disciple nearby said, "Perhaps the small boat gang's grandmaster came secretly, intending to set a trap and eliminate the aging Jin Shenfan first." "Oh!" Ding Songyan asked nothing more and bade the trio farewell. It was not until he had walked off the main street where the county office was located that he realized he had once again forgotten to mention the Jin household's dungeon. "I can come to an initial conclusion. It's Yen Chongqing crying wolf while being the wolf. A Jin household plant constantly monitoring my thoughts without being detected seems far less likely." Ding Songyan was no longer as furious or terrified as before. Instead, he examined the situation with relative calm, because he had discovered that he truly was, as Yen Chongqing said, surrounded by hidden dangers on all sides, not just from the Jin household alone. He even suspected that Yen Chongqing had deliberately used numerology to calculate that he would encounter something that revealed a crisis if he came to the county office, and had therefore verbally manipulated him into making the trip. If Yen Chongqing weren't so treacherous, and if the Jin household situation weren't obviously so dangerous, I would genuinely want to learn his secret art, his numerology, and his method of injecting qi into the mind to influence others' thoughts. Setting Yen Chongqing aside for now, Chun Yuliang's situation is equally troubling. After the original Ding Songyan obtained the secret classic, he sold it to the small boat gang rather than the Jin household. I can understand that. Cousin Wanqing is only a concubine. The original Ding Songyan was disposable to the Jin household. Being silenced was highly likely, but the small boat gang would have to factor in the Jin household's reaction and might not dare kill him. Of course, the original's choice assumed he didn't know the two gangs' conflict had already escalated to the point of official registration. But given that the conflict between the small boat gang and the Four Waters Brotherhood had already intensified to the point of formal registration, Chun Yuliang still dared to buy a rare version of the secret classic from Ding Songyan, who was half a Jin household member. How brave! Wasn't he afraid it was a trap set by the Jin household? If it really were the Jin household's doing, they could simply discard Ding Songyan as a pawn, report to the authorities that Chun Yuliang was suspected of possessing a complete secret classic, and the entire small boat gang would be in devastating trouble. Given the bizarre state of Chun Yuliang's corpse, could he be in a position that he had no choice? Wang Yishu too. Yes, when I bluffed him, he answered far more questions in far more detail than I ever expected. He practically treated me as one of his own. Was he also in a similar position of having no choice? To focus his thinking, Ding Songyan found a quiet stretch of street curb and sat down without bothering to lift his robe. He now needed to work through a scenario. If he had never transmigrated and the original Ding Songyan had truly died, what would have happened next? The Ding family would certainly have gone to the Zhen estate to plead for help. The Zhen household would have examined Ding Songyan's corpse. Without the interference of a transmigrator, they might actually have found something. If I were Patriarch Zhen, since the conflict was already registered, regardless of whether the clues pointed to Chun Yuliang, I would cast a wide net. I'd direct suspicion at the small boat gang, use revenge as a pretext, and legitimately engage them in open warfare. At that point, if the small boat gang's grandmaster were indeed in Dingjiang Prefecture, Patriarch Zhen would have no choice but to personally intervene, which means he would very likely leave the Zhen estate. If he's not at the estate, then someone could take advantage of his absence? Is the goal related to whatever brought Xiaoqing's group and the True Spirit sect to Dingjiang Prefecture? Or is it about Yen Chongqing in the dungeon? At this point in his reasoning, Ding Songyan's spirits lifted. Does this mean the person behind the scenes is the one who killed the original Ding Songyan? Assuming for now that the mastermind truly intended to escalate the conflict between the Four Waters Brotherhood and the small boat gang, forcing the long-retired Patriarch Zhen to leave his estate and fight, what would they think after I took over this body? They would find the resurrection strange. If the situation wasn't yet urgent, they might hold off, observe changes, and avoid encountering something unexplainable. Is that why the other group was tailing me? To abort the original plan, they would need to keep the matter contained to Chen Yuliang's purchase of the secret classic. That's why Wang Yishu spoke so freely and completely. That's why even if he and Xiangliu weren't killed on the spot, they would have disappeared afterward. That's why Su Chang'an's master died shortly after I came back to life. He was originally meant to be the trail of breadcrumbs left by the mastermind for the Jin household. As for the small boat gang's side, since the matter involves the secret classic, they shouldn't make a move. But then there's a problem. With the small boat gang currently being uprooted in Dingjiang Prefecture, wouldn't they react? And did Xiangliu ever report the secret classic matter to his superiors? Or rather, the one who authenticated that secret classic as a complete version wasn't Xiangliu, and wasn't the small boat gang's grandmaster, but the person behind the scenes? What was their purpose in using Xiangliu's mouth to declare it genuine? Ding Songyan's head was throbbing. He stood and began pacing slowly along the street. Having formed an overall picture, he felt that regardless of whether he was mostly right or mostly wrong, he at least had several directions to probe and verify. What he feared most was being lost in fog with nowhere to direct his energy. As things stand, I'm not entirely powerless anymore. The qi that Yan Chongqing gave me can be used twice, and its power should be considerable. Regarding the illusion-piercing ability, I need to be careful. What I see might not be the truth hidden beneath an illusion. Could just as easily be another layer of illusion that Yan Chongqing uses to mislead me. Piercing illusions doesn't necessarily mean what's revealed is real. But for the life-saving and offensive effects, Yan Chongqing is unlikely to be lying. My death serves him no purpose whatsoever. That much I can trust. Ding Songyan's thoughts had just begun to wander when a familiar call sounded softly by his ear. The voice kept very low. Ding Songyan. Miss Xiaoqing? Ding Songyan looked around quite naturally but saw no sign of the figure that would certainly attract eyeballs. Chapter 29. Attempt. Over here, over here. A figure crouching before a jewelry stall at the roadside turned slightly and beckoned to Ding Songyan. Ding Songyan stopped, circled the wooden railing, and browsed past several stalls one by one until he crouched beside the figure, pretending to pick out silver hairpins and wooden combs for his sister. He glanced from the corner of his eye and almost did not dare believe it was Xiaoqing beside him. The person wore a plain cloth skirt and a thornwood hairpin, hair done up in a married woman's bun, with an unremarkable face, the kind of person you would see anywhere. Miss Xiaoqing. Ding Songyan picked up a silver hairpin, examining it repeatedly while keeping his voice barely audible. Disguise technique, Xiaoqing replied in a light tone, her voice equally faint. Are the disguise techniques of this world this good? I really want to learn too. Ding Songyan sighed inwardly. Xiaoqing pretended to browse. When the stall owner turned to attend to another potential customer, she continued in a low voice. I've been following you for quite some time. I haven't seen the tale you mentioned. He's already dead. Ding Songyan told Xiaoqing the latest developments. Oh! Xiaoqing's eyes turned, brightening faintly. This is quite complicated. She continued. I only noticed the Zhun household's retainer you watching you from the shadows. Master Yu, your tailing technique isn't very good. Ren Yoyang's guard spotted you, and Miss Xiaoqing spotted you too. Despite his worries, Ding Songyan could not help the criticism. Xiaoqing set down the silver hairpin with its crude pearl flowers, her voice growing slightly more serious. When you went to the Linjiang County office, Patriarch Zhun was in a private room at a restaurant nearby. After you came out, he left without lingering. The person tailing you was also switched to a different Jin household retainer. Patriarch Zhun was nearby when I tried to report to the authorities? Ding Songyan was startled. Then his reasoning kicked in. Patriarch Zhun wasn't previously certain whether Yan Chongqing could make me forget about reporting. So he came in person, ready to intervene. That shows how seriously he takes this. Once he confirmed that Yan Chongqing had tampered with me, he stopped worrying and left. If Yan Chongqing isn't lying about being imprisoned, his martial abilities and freedom of movement were probably destroyed long ago. He can only do things on the spiritual or mental level. That's something Patriarch Zhen can't fully control. He can only guess, never be certain. But then Yan Chongqing endured for years in silence, only to expose his hidden card to Patriarch Zhen just like that? He must have something else to fall back on. If I were Patriarch Shen, I would reach the same conclusion. Damn, I hate this kind of multi-layered reasoning. While thinking, Ding Songyan did not forget to thank his helper. Miss Xiaoqing, I'm deeply grateful for your kindness. I'll remember it for eternity. If the worst comes to worst, I'll do whatever it takes. Just please take my family out of Dingjiang Prefecture. Xiaoqing chuckled softly. Forget eternal gratitude. If you really want to repay me, hurry up and relearn how to write properly. Practice when you can. Reading your simplified characters in the outlines every night gives me a headache, but I've been too polite to say so. Now just go about your business as normal. I'll keep watching. She selected a wooden hairpin, took out her coin pouch, paid, stood, and left the jewelry stall, merging once again into the flow of passers-by. She played that well. I was genuinely worried she'd toss a silver ingot at the stall owner. Ding Songyan spent 2 qian of silver on a silver hairpin without pearl flowers but with reasonably fine craftsmanship. He planned to give it to his sister tonight as a return gift for the 50 coins she had given him earlier. It was not that he did not understand frugality. Rather, he felt that while trapped in a situation bristling with dangers, silver should be spent when it needed to be spent. Better that than dying with a pile of money that might not even reach his family. Besides, thanks to Xiaoqing's tips and Su Chang'an's gift, his purse was currently quite full. Leaving the jewelry stall, Ding Songyan used the intelligence Xiaoqing had provided to think through several things more clearly. His next move was to find an opportunity to test the qi that Yan Chongqing had given him, to confirm just what hurting others and saving his life could actually accomplish. He could not afford to hoard it, finding it too precious to ever use it. If the critical moment came and the effect fell short of expectations, he would be doomed. Understanding the situation was a necessary step in making a plan. Moreover, this would help Ding Songyan verify 2 things. First, whether the seed in his mind would become less effective at erasing key thoughts as the qi was consumed. Second, whether Yan Chongqing still had the ability to replenish the qi, which would give Ding Songyan insight into what cards the old man still held. Additionally, in Ding Songyan's view, the Zhen household was an enemy, and Yan Chongqing was equally one. Every bit more he could squeeze from the old man and every scrap of additional advantage he could gain would give him that much more hope of survival. Beyond testing the qi, Ding Songyan had other plans. Returning to Xiangliu Lane, he did not go home. Instead, he knocked on Su Chang'an's door. Su Chang'an's face lit up with surprise at seeing him. I visited several martial halls today. Want to hear what I found? Ding Songyan did not answer. He pulled Su Chang'an to the well and asked thoughtfully, Do you know if the small boat gang still has any hidden agents in the city? Several days had passed, and the small boat gang's overt forces in Dingjiang Prefecture had been uprooted by the Four Waters Brotherhood. No idea. Su Chang'an shook his head blankly. Brother Ding, why are you asking? If even the Four Waters Brotherhood can't find their hidden agents, how would I know? What about people or organizations that were once closely associated with the small boat gang and still exist? Ding Songyan pressed. As a thief, a bottom dweller in the Jianghu, Su Chang'an did know certain things. The Stone Pool Martial Hall's Master Lu. Chun Yuliang was killed by Master Yu inside their hall. Ding Songyan nodded with satisfaction, gave a brief thanks, and turned to leave Xiangliu Lane. Brother Ding, where are you going? Su Chang'an followed, curious. Ding Songyan glanced at him. To visit Stone Pool Martial Hall's Master Lu. To see if I can make contact with the small boat gang. You? Aren't you with the Zhen household? Su Chang'an was horrified. Ding Songyan chuckled. For several years, I was a great believer in a saying. There are no permanent friends, and no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. Su Chang'an ruminated over the phrase and found it quite reasonable. He asked offhandedly, You said you were a great believer. You stopped believing later. Later? Once you've seen enough, you'll know that it doesn't encompass all people or all situations. Ding Songyan stared straight ahead, the smile fading from his face. Su Chang'an grew worried. Aren't you afraid the Zhen household will turn on you? He actually wants to befriend the small boat gang, the Zhun household's enemy. If you don't say anything, and I don't say anything, and the small boat gang doesn't say anything, who would know? Ding Songyan was of course not going to tell Su Chang'an that a Zhun household retainer was tailing him. One of his purposes was precisely to test whether he had a death exemption token, one with a limited duration and limited scope. Hearing Ding Songyan's response, Su Chang'an lost all trace of his smile. His face turned solemn and pale. He stayed at Ding Songyan's side regardless, pointing the way to Stone Pool Martial Hall. Under overcast skies, they rounded Dangkong Temple and arrived at the hall's entrance. Ding Songyan turned to Su Chang'an with a smile. You don't need to force yourself to come in with me. Brother Ding, you braved the mass graves to help me find my master. How could I abandon you today? Su Chang'an replied, his voice tight. This fellow actually has the spine of a great thief after all. I underestimated you earlier. Ding Songyan was mildly surprised. He smiled at Su Chang'an. Not bad. You actually repay any kindness shown to you. You haven't disappointed my belief that you can become a legendary thief someday. But I have something else for you to do afterward, so don't come in. If you actually die in there, who am I supposed to ask for help? His concern was not that Stone Pool Martial Hall would harm Su Chang'an, but that the Zhun household might. If his reasoning was correct, then as long as he did not try to report this or probe the bottom line these next few days, the Zhun household would turn a blind eye to whatever else he did. But Su Chang'an did not have that importance. What if the Zhun household decided to choose Su Chang'an as a sacrifice, as a warning to him? Su Chang'an, whose legs were already soft with fear, seized on the reasonable excuse, made repeated promises, and headed back toward Dangkong Temple to wait for him. Ding Songyan looked up at the plaque reading Stone Pool Martial Hall, and numerous scenes and images surfaced in his mind. He flicked back the hem of his robe, placed his left hand behind his waist, and walked in with measured steps. In the open space before the main hall, a number of men in fitted uniforms were striking wooden training dummies, lifting stone locks, or sparring in pairs and threes. Seeing a visitor arrive, one of the hall's disciples came forward to meet Ding Songyan. Before the man could ask his business, Ding Songyan surveyed the space with a slight smile. I am Ding Songyan of the Zhun household. I've come to pay my respects to Master Lu. His words had not even fully landed when the disciple approaching him froze. In the open space before the hall, those striking dummies stopped mid-motion. Those lifting stone locks went rigid. Those mid-spar found their stances spent, caught in place. Everything seemed to freeze into a still painting. The summer wind blew hot and low, carrying obvious humidity. High above, dark clouds gathered. A downpour seemed imminent. After a moment, the disciple who had approached finally stammered, I'll go inform my master. Please wait. Ding Songyan gave a slight nod and stood just inside the entrance, one hand resting behind his back, smiling as he surveyed the martial hall disciples in the open space. They retreated one after another. Not one dared meet his gaze. After roughly the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the disciple who had gone to report returned with a young man, walking toward Ding Songyan from the front hall. The young man was approximately 8 feet tall, dark-skinned, thickly built. At first glance his face looked old. Only on closer inspection could traces of youth be found. He did not look like a martial artist. Instead, he resembled a farmer from the countryside. Senior Brother Yang, it's him. The disciple, who left to report the matter, pointed at Ding Songyan, a tremor in his voice. Isn't this the storyteller from outside Dangkong Temple? When did you join the Zhun household? Senior Brother Yang sized up Ding Songyan, his tone calm and his stance steadfast. Ding Songyan smiled and said, Just yesterday. Senior Brother Yang asked nothing more and gestured an invitation. My master is waiting for you at the training ground. Ding Songyan smiled faintly, maintained his posture with one hand behind his back, and followed Senior Brother Yang at an unhurried pace through halls and courtyards. Chapter 30. It's raining. The training grounds of Stone Pool Martial Hall was 5 or 6 times larger than the space before the main hall. It was leveled flat, with weapon racks arranged around the perimeter holding all manner of weapons. Sabers, spears, swords, halberds, and more. Some had sharpened edges, others did not. Beyond these, wooden dummies, stone locks, wooden stakes, archery targets, iron water vats, and other training equipment were present in full. The martial hall's master, a man named Lu Yuxuan, stood beside a 9-foot-tall gray stone figure, hands behind his back, waiting for Ding Songyan. His hair and beard had gone white and his mouth protruded slightly. His face was fleshy, a sign of prosperity. Several red patches of markings dotted his neck and the backs of his hands. After delivering Ding Songyan, senior brother Yang retreated to the edge of the training ground but did not leave. 7 or 8 martial hall disciples also lingered nearby, half-hidden, watching with grave expressions and hatred in their eyes. These few have backbone and courage. They didn't flee just because I introduced myself as a Jin household representative. Ding Songyan cupped his hands toward Lu Yuxuan. Greetings, Hall Master Lu. Lu Yuxuan studied the thoroughly composed Ding Songyan and asked in a low voice, "What brings you here, young Master Ding?" Ding Songyan placed one hand behind his back again and said in a casual conversational tone, "Hall Master Lu, have you ever felt that something was off about Chun Yuliang in the days before his death?" Lu Yuxuan stared at Ding Songyan's face. After a moment, he slowly shook his head. No. Ding Songyan didn't expect a different answer from him. He only wanted to use Lu Yuxuan as a conduit to pass that question along to those from the small boat gang. Whether the small boat gang would believe it or whether they could uncover anything abnormal, as well as what they would do next, was not up to him. For now, he could only take things one step at a time. The one thing he could be certain of was that the small boat gang would not seek to cooperate with him in the short term. After all, he was a Jin household member, and Chun Yuliang had just been killed because of a similar arrangement. They would not want to fall for the same trick twice. And have you ever felt that Chun Yuliang was too aggressive these past 2 or 3 months? Ding Songyan, drawing on what he had heard at the county office and in street rumors, offered another prompt, though with less certainty. Lu Yuxuan looked into Ding Songyan's eyes that hid a smile and slowly shook his head again. No. Perhaps he had no choice in the matter, Ding Songyan said deliberately, his tone one of wistfulness. Without waiting for the hall master's response, he half-turned and studied the tall stone figure with its many sword and saber scars. He laughed at himself. Why do I think something was wrong? Because I was caught up in it. I became a pawn the Jin household was willing to sacrifice. Lu Yuxuan's eyes flickered. His expression shifted slightly. With one hand still behind his back, Ding Songyan paced to his side, facing forward toward another wooden dummy. He spoke in a low voice as though to himself. I nearly lost my life because of it, but I also had a stroke of extraordinary fortune. Things are no longer the same. I won't swallow that grievance. Having said this, he did not look at Hall Master Lu's expression. He smiled, shook his head, and raised his right hand, which had been hanging at his side. With this motion, he activated the hazy, glowing seed in his mind, sending it instantly to his palm. Ding Songyan's senses suddenly elevated, as if his soul had left his body and was looking down at everything from above. He clearly sensed the wind sweeping across the training ground. It was tainted with violent heaven and earth chi and carried oppressive dark clouds. Amidst them, cruel silver-white flashes leaped. Beyond him, there seemed to be another invisible body, its apertures hidden in the void, breathing the world. Following some arcane trajectory, Ding Songyan pushed out his right palm. In that instant, the gale battering the training ground vanished completely. The air turned stifling, nearly solid. Ding Songyan's palm landed on the wooden dummy before him, light as a feather. An instant later, a violent torrent of chi erupted from his palm. All the wind that had disappeared moments ago seemed to have been transferred here, wound together, first compressed to a breaking point, then detonating outward. All sound was swallowed. The wooden dummy disintegrated instantly, swept up by visible gales into the sky, as though a true dragon were drawing water from the clouds above. Still wearing that same faint smile, Ding Songyan withdrew his right palm and placed it behind his back as well. He turned and walked toward the edge of the training ground without sparing Hall Master Lu another glance. Hall Master Lu, Senior Brother Yang, and the 7 or 8 disciples hiding nearby all stared with frozen eyes at the water-sucking tornado that spiraled 30 or 40 feet high, as well as the drifting fragments that the wooden dummy had been reduced to. At that very moment, a bolt of lightning descended from the heavens, striking with tremendous force at the exact spot where the dummy had stood. It lit Hall Master Lu's face silver-white and cast the expressions of Senior Brother Yang and the others into shifting shadows. Boom! Rolling thunder echoed outward, and the storm that had been brewing finally broke over Dingjiang Prefecture in a torrential downpour. By the time the fat raindrops came hammering down behind him, Ding Songyan had already stepped into the covered walkway, both hands still clasped behind his back. With his back to Hall Master Lu and the others, the smile gradually faded from his face, replaced by astonishment. Wasn't that effect a bit too good? Good thing I walked away right after my act. I almost got struck by lightning. If he had known Yen Chongqing's chi was this terrifying, he would have chosen the 9-foot stone figure. He had picked the wooden dummy out of fear that striking the stone would accomplish nothing, making a fool of himself while giving everyone a good laugh. With hands still behind his back, Ding Songyan maintained his composure as he walked step by step back toward the Stone Pool Martial Hall's main entrance. Looking at the curtain of rain ahead, his expression sank. I didn't bring an umbrella. Under the eaves of Dangkong Temple, Ding Songyan wrung out a portion of his clothes, squeezing out a steady stream of water. How did this rain come on so suddenly, and this heavy too? Su Chang'an beside him was equally soaked, muttering away. Isn't it perfectly normal for the weather to change without warning in June? Ding Songyan replied with a common saying. He himself had not quite figured it out either. Had the rain been triggered by him, or had it simply been ready to fall at that moment, or was it both, compounding each other? Regardless, Yen Chongqing's strength was on full display. A single thread of qi, lent out after years of being crippled, had this much power. Jin Qianfan must be deeply wary of him. If Yen Chongqing hadn't been gravely wounded at the time, Jin Qianfan wouldn't have the guts to covet that treasure even with 10 times the courage. Assuming Yen Chongqing wasn't lying about helping Jin Qianfan become a grandmaster, then he might well be at the Heavenman realm. There are only a handful of such figures in the world. If I had more time, if I had more than just Shaoqing and Ren Yuyang as information sources, I could probably pin down Yen Chongqing's true identity through comparison. Ding Songyan's thoughts never stopped churning. Su Chang'an had only been complaining about the weather and hadn't thought much of it. He glanced at the other people sheltering under the temple eaves, lowered his voice, and asked about what mattered. Brother Ding, how did it go with Hall Master Lu? Quite well. I think he was rather impressed with me. Ding Songyan lied through his teeth. I can't exactly say I stunned them all, can I? He was not worried that Hall Master Lu would spread the word about his extraordinary fortune or sudden rise in power. Nor did he fear Senior Brother Yang or the other disciples leaking it to the authorities. What he actually wished was that he could personally steer the rumors spreading across the Jianghu. He wished he could go to the county office and turn himself in, to let the E-Clan and the Bright Knight sect examine exactly what extraordinary fortune he had received. Thanks to that seed in his sea of consciousness, even reporting to the authorities required this kind of roundabout approach, making a conspicuous display and hoping someone noticed. And the odds of success were still low. Su Chang'an heaved a sigh of relief. I don't know what you're actually planning, Brother Ding, but if there's anything I can help with, just ask. I won't stand on ceremony. Ding Songyan looked at Su Chang'an and the corners of his mouth curled up. Su Chang'an shivered inexplicably. After the storm passed, Ding Songyan walked into his home on Qingyu Lane. Qingyan was not at all surprised by his early return. With that kind of downpour, the market outside Dangkong Temple could hardly continue. Her brother, with no stories left to hear, had naturally come home. Here. For you. Ding Songyan produced the silver hairpin he had bought earlier and handed it over. Qingyan's eyes widened, her delicate brows lifting slightly. Second brother, you only have soul departure sickness, not some cornucopia. What are you giving me a silver hairpin for? Save it for your future wife. Isn't it only natural for an older brother to help his sister save up some private funds? Ding Songyan laughed. Just take it. Otherwise, I'll give it to Ahua. Who's Ahua? Qingyan felt this was far more worth investigating. Her reluctance weakened and she accepted the hairpin. Ding Songyan held back his laughter. The yellow dog at Old Man Ren's place at the end of the lane. I forgot its name, so I gave it a new one, Ahua. Ding Qingyan's expression quickly froze. She gritted her teeth and said, Is it fun to tease me? Yes. Ding Songyan rushed back to the west wing before his sister could pick up the broom. He changed out of his wet clothes and dried his body with a cloth. When he returned to the main room, Ding Qingyan was holding the bronze mirror and turning it around to admire the silver hairpin that had been inserted into her hair. You might as well give me money directly, she muttered while looking at the bronze mirror with a bright smile. Ding Songyan did not call her out. He pulled over a stool and sat down, murmuring with a touch of satisfaction. These next few days I'll see what mother, father, and bull might need or want. Ding Qingyan was stunned. She put down the bronze mirror and frowned at Ding Song, asking with concern, Second brother? You're not in some kind of trouble again, are you? Ding Songyan shook his head and smiled. It's just that I've run into a benefactor lately, and Su Chang'an thanked me with quite a bit of silver. Where did he get it? Which wealthy household did he rob? Qingyan's attention was diverted again. Ding Songyan briefly explained the situation regarding Su Chang'an's master. While it was still early, he began practicing his calligraphy. That night, he prepared to advance Su Shirlin's story again. Qingyan, who always chatted with him for a while before sleep, suddenly said from the other side of the screen, Second brother, today I was actually very happy. Felt like before. Back then you would tell me a story every night, and I'd fall asleep listening. Her voice gradually lowered. Then she squeezed out a smile and said with mock indignation, You haven't even told me the legend of the white snake properly. Just reading the outline is so bland. Ding Songyan's outlines were only rough drafts. Ding Songyan had planned to push this off to later. He was currently full of worries. If he didn't have to ask Miss Xiaoqing for information, he wouldn't even want to write this installment of the legend of the white snake. Without waiting for him to continue, Qingyan muttered to herself, Second brother, I know you've been busy lately, staying up every night to write. I was just saying things on a whim. Whenever you're free, whenever there's nothing to do before bed, you can narrate it to me then. If it weren't for all the people and noise outside Dangkong Temple, I would have gone to hear your storytelling at least once. Mother hasn't been letting me go out much these past few days, and I don't want to be a bother to you all. Hearing Qingyan's considerate and sensible words, Ding Songyan's heart softened. He sighed silently and said, It's still early tonight. I'll tell you one installment. Then, just a quarter hour is fine. Qingyan's voice was full of surprise and delight. I want to hear the part where Lady Bai frightens Su Xian to death. All right. Ding Songyan started from Feiyi's manipulation and Su Xian noticing small details, narrated through the entire Dragon Boat Festival Realgar wine episode, and at the end even sang by Suzhen at the foot of Qingqing Mountain for his sister. Qingyan began humming the song, and Ding Songyan was quite impressed. This was exactly the cold, ethereal, otherworldly quality he had been looking for. Before he could praise her, Qingyan was already laughing softly. Second brother, I just knew that if I straight up asked you to tell me a story, you would certainly refuse. But if I acted good and sensible, gentle and considerate, with just a touch of feeling wronged, you would probably give in. Humph. That's what you get for teasing me earlier. I'm asleep now, don't disturb me. Ding Songyan had almost forgotten his little sister had this side to her. After a moment, he shook his head with a laugh and picked up the brush from its rest. He wrote for a good while before finally seeing Xiaoqing's familiar figure. As he wrote, he casually asked, Miss Xiaoqing, do you happen to know someone named Yen Chongqing? End of chapter.